Chapter 13. Only then did the person who brought Zhang Xiaohua and the others speak up, joking with the large man. Now Butcher Lu has heard a good person again. This little brother came from the Guozhuang house and brought news of your family's daughter. This time, you must have scared him so much that he's forgotten. Butcher Lu, on the other hand, didn't mind the villager's words. He patted Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder, causing Zhang Xiaohua to grin and say, I can tell with one look that this little brother is a broad-minded person. Why would he mind such a small joke? Zhang Xiaohua looked at his large hand that was used to butcher pigs and thought, I want to mind you, but you have to lend me some courage. Please don't be so intimate, my body has just recovered. She said, I wouldn't dare. This must be Sister Lu Yeye's father. Looking at your manly posture, it's just as Sister said. Then she added in her heart, it's Xiongzi. When Butcher Lu heard this, he was overjoyed and his eyes narrowed. Yeye is still talking about this with you. That's right. Why did Yeye and Qianqian go to your Guozhuang house? Are they all right? Only now did he remember to ask about his daughter. Mr. Lu spoke up from the side. Let's talk inside first. Seeing how this little brother is neither too fast nor too slow, the two daughters should be fine. After he finished speaking, he led Zhang Xiaohua and his companions into the house. The villager who led the way said, I won't go in, I'll go back first. I'll call Lu Kai back on the way. Mr. Lu nodded in thanks and watched the villager leave before inviting Zhang Xiaohua into the house for a chat. Zhang Xiaohua entered the courtyard and saw that it was about the same size as her own house. The layout was simple, and there weren't as many farm tools as her own house. The stove didn't seem to be out in the open. There were about 2 rooms in front of her, and there were also 2 rooms on the left and right. She didn't know why Sister Lu had so many rooms when there were only 3 people in her house. When he walked into the front room, he realized the difference between them. There was a painting in the central room of the Lu family. It was a painting of an old scholar. In front of the painting, there were a few plates with fruits, snacks, and other things on them. It seemed that they were offering something. There was a painting on the left wall. It was snowing and there were a few people enjoying the snow in the pavilion. There were a few calligraphy pieces on the right wall. They looked like dragons flying and phoenixes flying. They should be written very well. It was a pity that Zhang Xiaohua didn't recognize them. There was a square table in front of him. On the table, there was a teapot, a few cups and a plate of food. There were 2 chairs on the left and right of the table. There was also a small square table and a few chairs on both sides of the wall. On the table, there was a pot with flowers and plants. Looking at the 4 corners of the room, there were also a few plants in the pots. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the house that was completely different from her own house. She sighed in her heart. Is this the difference between a scholar and a farmer? Under her mother's management, her house was also quite clean and tidy. There were also paintings on the walls, but they were just some pictures of immortals. Her mother didn't seem to know how to arrange the flowers and plants in the pots. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She thought, if Sister Lu manages our house, what will it be like? As Zhang Xiaohua thought about it, he stood there. It wasn't that she was lost in her thoughts, but she didn't know where to sit. There were only a few chairs in her house. Usually she would stand. Teacher Lu's house had so many chairs. There must be something special about it. She didn't know how to sit. When Teacher Lu saw this, he quickly let Zhang Xiaohua and the others sit. Then Butcher Lu poured a cup of tea for them and brought it over. Zhang Xiaohua took the teacup and gulped it down in one gulp. Then he smacked his lips. The water tasted really good. Butcher Lu saw that Zhang Xiaohua had finished drinking, so he quickly poured another cup for him. Zhang Xiaohua and Butcher Lu had been walking for the whole morning, so they were already thirsty. Since the water was so good, the 2 of them drank 4 cups of water in a row before stopping. Butcher Lu's eyes were the same as Teacher Lu's. They were filled with gratitude. Although Butcher Lu was a boorish person who slaughtered pigs, he also knew that they had rushed such a long distance and were so thirsty. It was all to tell his daughter that they were safe. Zhang Xiaohua finished drinking the water. Just as she was about to speak, she heard hurried footsteps from outside the house. Not long after, she saw a scholar who was about the same age and height as her elder brother running in. He must be Lu Qian's brother, Lu Kai. When Lu Kai entered the house, he first greeted Teacher Lu and Butcher Lu respectively. Then Teacher Lu introduced Zhang Xiaohua and the others to Lu Kai. Lu Kai then greeted them with a bow. Zhang Xiaohua and Butcher Lu didn't know much about these things, so they followed suit and returned the greeting. Lu Kai then asked Teacher Lu, "How is my younger sister?" Zhang Xiaohua looked at the scholar who was obviously much thinner than her elder brother. She thought to herself, scholars really have a lot of etiquette. This brother Lu is really patient. He only asked after seeing such a polite greeting. If it was Butcher Lu, he would have asked directly. Oh right, he must be complaining that brother Lu came at the wrong time. She couldn't help but glance at Butcher Lu, who was also anxiously waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to speak. Sure enough, before Teacher Lu opened his mouth, Butcher Lu said, "You should drink some water first. This little brother hasn't said anything yet, and you're already back." Lu Kai sat on the chair opposite Zhang Xiaohua. He wasn't in a hurry to drink the water. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua eagerly, waiting for him to speak. Zhang Xiaohua then introduced herself and told him everything that happened yesterday in detail. However, she was cautious and didn't say the specific amount of money that the two bullies lost. Zhang Xiaohua's eloquence wasn't very good and she spoke haltingly. However, even so, the four people in the room listened with fear and trepidation. Teacher Lu, Butcher Lu, and Lu Kai's faces were ashen. Butcher Lu even jumped up from his chair a few times, but he was gently stopped by Teacher Lu. When Zhang Xiaohua finished, Butcher Lu quickly poured 2 cups of water for Zhang Xiaohua. Everyone also drank a cup. It seemed that not only did the talking make the people's mouths dry, the listening people were also nervous. After drinking the water, Teacher Lu walked in front of Zhang Xiaohua and bowed deeply, saying, "This old man would like to thank the virtuous father and son for saving my daughter." Lu Kai and Butcher Lu also quickly followed suit and bowed. Zhang Xiaohua was so scared that she jumped down from her chair. Why did they have to bow again? She hurriedly bowed in a nondescript manner. Zhang Xiaohua comforted them, saying, "Sister Lu and the others are staying in our house. It's quite good. You don't have to worry." In fact, everyone knew that their loved ones were fine. However, they didn't see their loved ones get out of danger with their own eyes. After all, they felt uneasy. When everyone sat down again, Teacher Lu said, "From the Guozhuang house to here, Xiaohua and the others walked the whole morning. I reckon that we won't be able to bring the children back today. How about this, second brother? You go back first and let sister-in-law prepare lunch. Let Xiaohua and the others eat first. After lunch, let Lu Kai and Xiaohua go to the Guozhuang house. Tomorrow, we'll go together to bring the children back. What do you think?" Butcher Lu said, "No, let me go first. I'm worried. We'll probably have to walk at night to the Guozhuang house later. It'll be safer if I follow." Teacher Lu thought about it and agreed. Lunch was eaten at Butcher Lu's house. Lu Qian wasn't there, so there was no one in Teacher Lu's house to cook. Lu Ye's mother knew that her daughter was fine and had to entertain her family's benefactor. This meal was exceptionally sumptuous. Zhang Xiaohua, who was already hungry and hadn't eaten red braised pork for a long time, ate until her belly was full. After lunch, Zhang Xiaohua, Lu Qian, and Butcher Lu hurried back to the Guozhuang house. Not to mention for the time being, Wuzhua Peak, which was only a few hundred miles away from them, was another scene altogether. In the morning, when the shadow passed between the 2 jujube trees, Yanming Jusher flashed between the trees. Fortunately, he was a martial artist and his eyes were especially sharp. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to see clearly. The rest of the people still didn't understand what was going on. They could only stare blankly at Yanming Jusher's back. Yanming Jusher wasn't angry. He raised his voice and said, "Why aren't you guys coming over?" When everyone arrived between the 2 jujube trees, they looked carefully. It didn't seem to be any different from the other jujube trees. Yanming Jusher smiled and said, "No need to look. It's definitely no different from the others. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so complicated. Now that we're preparing to enter the forest, take out the leather in your hands." The few of them took out the leather as instructed. Yanming Jusher said, "Get some fresh blood and smear it on the top of the back of the leather." After he finished speaking, he took out a dagger, cut his finger, and smeared the blood on the leather. Ma Xiangyang, Wen Hai, and Tan Wen all did the same. A line of words appeared on the leather. It was, go straight 10 trees, back 6 trees, left 6 trees, right 8 trees. Then, Yanming Jusher put together the words according to the diagram. It was the incantation for entering the forest. Go straight 10 trees, right 8 trees, back 6 trees, left 6 trees. Yanming Jusher said, "All right, everyone get ready. We're preparing to enter the forest. I'll lead the way. Xiaoxia Ma and Xiaoxia Wen will follow behind. Heroine Shui and Chief Situ will be in the middle. The Tan brothers will bring up the rear. Everyone keep your spirits up. Don't fall behind." The jujube forest in front of them was no longer as dark as it was at night. However, the bright sunlight still couldn't penetrate the dense forest. The dense fog in the forest made it difficult to see the end. The cold wind blew through the treetops, making a hoo-hoo sound, but it didn't seem to be able to blow away the light fog. Yanming Jusher took out his dagger and drew a mark on the 2 jujube trees. Then he carefully walked through the 2 ordinary trees. The rest of the group followed the previously agreed upon order, entering in a single file. The dense fog in the forest was very thick. One couldn't see more than 10 feet in front of them. It was also very humid. Not long after, everyone's clothes and shoes were soaked. In order to deal with unexpected danger, everyone held weapons in their hands. At this time, they all felt the cold. No one had entered the forest for many years. The ground was covered with a thick layer of fallen leaves and rotting jujubes. Walking on it was very difficult. The jujube tree's branches and leaves were very dense, intertwining with each other. Sometimes they even blocked the path. However, no one dared to rashly cut down the branches for fear of causing an accident. Just as everyone was moving forward in an orderly manner, they suddenly heard Situ Ping's exclamation, "Look over there." Chapter 14. When everyone followed Situ Ping's horrified gaze, sure enough, there was a white skeleton leaning against a jujube tree about 4 or 5 feet away. The black eye sockets of the skeleton were staring in their direction. Everyone's hair immediately stood on end, and their hands holding their weapons tightened. Situ Ping was a member of the Jianghu. She had seen a lot of bloody scenes, and had done a lot of things like murder and arson. How could she be scared by this little skeleton? However, this jujube forest's fierce reputation, this endless fog, and this cold weather. Everyone's heart was in their throats, so she couldn't help but cry out. Yanming Jusher and the others stopped and waited for a moment. They didn't see any movement from the skeleton, so everyone started walking again. Situ Ping was a bit embarrassed, but the others didn't blame her. In this kind of unknown environment, anyone would lose control of their emotions. Everyone was worried. As the group went deeper, the number of bones they encountered gradually increased. They even appeared many times along the path. No one dared to avoid them, and directly cross them. There were many human skeletons, but there were even more of all kinds of animal skeletons. It seemed that the animals that had mistakenly entered the forest for so many years had innocently entered this strange and mysterious place. They were lost here, and could no longer get out. They wandered around and exhausted their strength, and finally lay under the jujube tree, wailing and dying. Thinking of this, the group became even more cautious. Originally, they still had some thoughts of exploring the power of the forest, but now, they completely dispelled it. These people were originally chosen by their elders to be careful and resolute in their actions. Naturally, they would not lose their lives in vain because of a little curiosity in their hearts. This forest seemed to be endless. After walking for a long time, it was still the same scene. If it weren't for the appearance of different bones, everyone would have thought that they had lost their way. Fortunately, they didn't encounter any danger along the way. Everyone calmed down, and just wanted to continue moving forward, so that they could get out of this forest as soon as possible. After walking in silence for a long time, Situ Ping, as a local tyrant, began to have some thoughts. Perhaps this was what it meant to be moved after a long period of silence. He didn't know what the others were thinking, but Situ Ping's thoughts were indeed moved. The evil tiger gang was originally based in Lu Town, and this Stoneman Peak was also within the evil tiger gang's sphere of influence. In the past, although he knew that the Five Claw Peak was a dangerous place, he didn't know the method to enter. and had been guarding this place for nothing. Now that he knew the method, wouldn't this place be his backyard in the future? However, the other 4 factions were much bigger than her. How were they going to deal with this secret area? Or would she be abandoned after she lost her use? Her life would be in danger. Just as Situping was thinking about her gains and losses, her feet suddenly tripped on a tree root. Her body slanted to the right. Coincidentally, they were walking very close to the edge of 2 trees. As soon as Situping felt her body lose balance, she immediately stopped thinking and kicked in the air. Her body nimbly stood upright and steadily landed on the ground. However, she had already deviated from the area between the 2 trees and was standing next to a jujube tree. This sudden change caused everyone else to stop. Yanming Jusher, Ma Xiangyang, and Wenwenhai all turned around to look at Situping. Ma Xiangyang looked at the tree root on the ground thoughtfully. Everyone waited for Situping to come out from under the tree, so they could continue walking together. However, at this moment, a strange scene occurred. Situping turned around and looked around, her gaze sweeping past everyone as if she didn't see them. Situping's face revealed a panicked expression as she looked around again. She raised her foot to walk, but then stopped, not daring to make any strange movements. Situping's mouth moved as if she was calling out to everyone, but no one could hear her. Seeing this, Yanming Jusher hurriedly used telepathy to speak to Situping. "Can you hear me? If you hear me, nod your head." At this moment, Situping's face was filled with ecstasy. She kept nodding her head like a chick eating rice. Yanming Jusher said again, "Turn left and listen to my instructions. Stop when I tell you to." Situping nodded again. Following Yanming Jusher's instructions, she faced everyone, and then walked towards them. It was strange. Situping only took 4 or 5 steps before she reached the place where everyone was standing. Situping's eyes immediately lit up as she saw everyone. Yanming Jusher didn't ask why Situping had fallen. Instead he asked, "What did you see just now?" Situping said with lingering fear, "When I stood up, I was still surrounded by jujube trees just like here. There was no difference, but I couldn't see any of you. No one responded when I shouted. If you hadn't spoken to me, I would have looked around again." Yanming Jusher frowned in thought. Ma Xiangyang smiled and said to Situping, "Chief Situ, you must be careful where you walk. If you're not careful, you'll lose your life. Lu Town's great foundation will belong to someone else. Take care." Situping bowed his head and said, "Ma, I understand. I'll be careful." Everyone became even more careful on the following road. They knew that this jungle wasn't as peaceful as it seemed on the surface. If something went wrong, they would be trapped and lose their lives here. Situping didn't know, but everyone else did. Shouting was useless. They could only use telepathy. This profound martial art wasn't something that everyone knew. Instead of placing their hopes on others, it was better to be careful. After walking for the time it took for 4 or 5 incense sticks to burn, the number of bones on the road gradually decreased. The fog also thinned. They were about to reach the edge of the jungle. Sure enough, not long after, they saw light in the distance. Yanming Jusher led everyone in a roundabout way according to the mnemonic chant. They were even more careful. Nothing unexpected happened. The group of people followed the mnemonic chant and walked through the last tree safely out of the jungle. What greeted them was a world that left them dumbfounded. In front of them was a secret land that was as warm as spring. The area of this land wasn't very large. In the middle of the land was a large lake. White fog rose from the lake. Beside the lake was a small house made of stone. Around the house were several fields with plants. They couldn't see clearly from far away. Under the leadership of Yanming Jusher, everyone stepped into this place that no one had set foot in for hundreds of years. Yanming Jusher said to everyone, "According to the booklet, there is no danger in entering the secret land. Everyone can walk without worry. But for safety, I suggest that everyone move together. Follow me." Then he walked to the lake. When everyone walked to the lake, a burst of hot air hit their faces. They saw the lake water bubbling. Yanming Jusher squatted down and found a branch to put in the water. Seeing that there was nothing unusual, he thought about how to know the temperature of the lake water. Tan Wu came forward and took out an egg from his arms. He said embarrassedly, I like to drink raw eggs. There are a few left over from yesterday. Now is the time to test the temperature of the water. Then he found a cloth bag and put it in the lake water. Not long after, he took out the egg. Sure enough, it was cooked. This time, everyone's idea of entering the water to explore was dispelled. It seemed that the temperature of this world was different from the outside. It should be related to the lake water. Everyone walked along the lake and walked to the only stone house. Presumably, the treasure that everyone was looking forward to should be inside. After walking half a circle around the lake, they did not see any animals and did not encounter any danger. Everyone's heart was relieved. It seemed that the master's will was not a lie. There were several medicinal fields around the stone house. Most of the medicinal herbs were unknown. After all, they were not pharmacists from the sect. Even the knowledgeable hermit Yanming could only recognize a few of them, such as tianqi, ginseng, atractalodes, golden sunflower, and so on. These medicinal herbs were very ordinary outside, but they were extremely precious here. There was no other reason. Any medicinal herb that had been here for 300 years or longer would be extremely precious. Not to mention the other unknown drugs, which should be something that had been lost over the years. Not to mention what was in the stone house. Even the herbs in the herb garden were priceless treasures to the various sections. So everyone looked at these precious things eagerly, thinking about how to bring them back. Yanming Jusher frowned and said to everyone, I didn't think that there would be such precious medicinal herbs here. It's beyond our expectations. But I don't know how to bring them back. Let's go to the stone house first. When we come out, we'll think of a way. In any case, these medicinal herbs don't have legs and can't run away. Don't be greedy. Everyone smiled and followed Yanming Jusher to the stone house. This was a very simple stone house. It was so simple that it did not have a door. Yanming Jusher walked to the empty door, but did not dare to enter. Although it was clearly written in the book that there were no traps here, he still had to be vigilant. He thought for a moment, then picked up a stone from the ground and threw it in. Listening to it, there was only the sound of a stone falling to the ground. There was no other movement. Yanming Jusher then walked into the stone house with a dagger in his hand. The others also followed. The stone house looked small from the outside, but when everyone went inside, they discovered that the area was quite large. It was like a hall, not a room like everyone had imagined. And the hall was not covered in a thick layer of dust because no one had come here for a long time. On the contrary, because there was no door, the ventilation was good, and there was no smell of dust in the room. Directly across from the hall was a smooth wall. The top was empty, and it felt like there should have been a portrait or something on it in the past. Below the wall was a long table and a square table. There was an incense burner on the long table. Far from the incense burner, there was a small square flat box. And on the table below the long table, there were 4 square brocade boxes casually placed. They had an antique look, and the patterns were not present today. There were 3 chairs on both sides of the square table. They were all placed casually, and there was a praying mat on each chair. There was nothing on the wall on their left, and there was a hole in it. It was probably a window. On the wall on their right, there were 3 paintings hanging on the wall. One was a man in brocade clothes, holding a knife in his hand, and riding a horse forward. Another was a scholar in white clothes, with a sword hanging at his waist, strolling leisurely. The last painting was a woman, her face covered with a white veil. Her figure was graceful, and she held a long whip in her hand, standing beside a small bridge. The 3 paintings had been eroded by time, and were not very clear. Moreover, there were no words on the 3 paintings, so no one could understand what they meant. No one could tell if there was a one-armed swordsman in the painting. Chapter 15. After looking around the hall, everyone focused their eyes on the 4 brocade boxes on the table, and the flat box on the long table. Everyone knew in their hearts that inside was the key point of this mission, the treasure of the secret plane. However, everyone was still muttering in their hearts. Coincidentally, there were 4 forces this time, and there were 4 brocade boxes on the table. If there were 3 forces that had just been lost in the dense forest, would there be 1 less brocade box on the table? These were just people's thoughts. These boxes had been here for more than 300 years. How could they suddenly disappear and suddenly appear? Yanming Jusher was still cautious. He walked to the front of the square table and did not rush to take the box. Instead, he carefully looked around. He knocked on the chair with the dagger first, and even knocked the futon to the ground. Then he used the dagger to put the brocade boxes in place, but he did not find any movement. Finally, he was still not at ease. He walked to the right side of the wall, opened the 3 paintings and looked at them separately. He did not find any mechanism. Then he walked to the front of the table and said to everyone, "It seems that there should be no mechanism here. What do you think?" The rest of the people had been following Layman Yanming ever since they entered the secret place. When they arrived at the hall, they didn't dare to move. There had been a saying about tactical deployments in Jianghu since ancient times, but in their era, tactical deployments had long become legends. Occasionally there would be a few tactical deployments, but they were just verbal deployments. They had never heard of any tactical deployments that could trap someone with just a few bamboo slips and a few stones, let alone a big tactical deployments made by the whole wild Jujube forest sect. This was obviously a big move made hundreds of years ago. Everyone's mind had long been shocked. They had already listened to their master's instructions and followed Layman Yanming's lead. At this time, when he asked for a suggestion, how could they have any objection? They all nodded and agreed. Yanming Jusher was very satisfied with their attitude. He said with a smile, "Jianghu is an unpredictable place. It's good to be more careful. You should also look around and see if there are other mechanisms in the hall. It's also your opportunity. If you get something, it's your benefit." Everyone looked at each other for a few moments before dispersing in all directions to check out the various corners of the hall. Everyone muttered in their hearts. Could it be that Yanming Jusher was planning something? Change the brocade box? However, the hall was only so big. Everyone could see clearly what he was doing, so they weren't afraid that he would do anything. Perhaps Senior really has the heart to take care of this Junior. In any case, it's not a big deal to look around. Sure enough, it didn't take long for everyone to finish searching, but they didn't find anything. It seemed that the treasures in the hall were these few boxes. When Yanming Jusher saw that everyone had returned, he cleared his throat and said, "According to the previous agreement, each of our 4 factions can choose a brocade box. Although clan leader Situ is from the evil tiger gang, you should belong to Xiaoxiama's faction, and not be considered an independent faction. Does clan leader Situ have any objections?" Situ Ping said calmly, "I have no objections." That's right. How could she dare to have any objections? Her life was saved by someone else. Yanming Jusher continued, "Then next, we'll follow the order of the leather hides. Follow the map from left to right and from top to bottom to pick the boxes. What we get will be up to fate." After saying this, he stood at the side of the table. According to the order, the Misty School should be the first to pick a box. When Wenhai thought for a moment and walked forward. He carefully looked at the 4 brocade boxes on the table. They were exactly the same, without any differences. There was a layer of dust on top of them. It seemed that they had been there for a long time. After thinking for a moment, he picked up the second box from left to right. Just as he was about to open it to see what was inside, he was stopped by Yanming Jusher. Yanming Jusher said, "There must be treasures inside the box. Since there are 4 of them, everyone will have a harvest. However, the items in each box may not be the same. There may be differences. If we all know what is inside each box, we will inevitably have greedy hearts. Why don't we all keep it a secret, and don't open the boxes until we leave this place?" Everyone nodded in agreement. When Wenhai also put away the brocade boxes, and returned them to their original positions. Next was Wan Jianfeng, Ma Xiangyang, then Yanming Jusher, and finally Tan Wu went forward to pick up the last brocade box. No one looked at it and put it away. After the distribution, everyone's eyes turned to the long table. There was a flat box in the distance. Yanming Jusher walked to the end of the long table and picked up the box. It was hard to the touch and seemed to be quite heavy. Looking at it carefully, it seemed to be carved out of a piece of stone. It seemed to be used to store treasures. However, for some reason, it was not placed on the table, but on the other end of the long table. Yanming Jusher walked to the table and passed the box around for everyone to see. Afterwards, he placed it on the table and quietly looked at everyone. He said, "There is only this box left in this room. There is no way to divide it equally. How about we do as we said before and use rock, paper, scissors to decide who gets it?" Everyone looked at each other and felt a burst of absurdity. The people of Jianghu actually wanted to use a child's game to decide such an important matter. However, if they did not use this gentle method, who would hold back when facing such a coveted treasure? It was hard to say who would benefit in the end. Everyone could only acquiesce. At this time Ma Xiangyang said, "Senior, I have a suggestion." Yanming Jusher said with an unsurprised expression, "Xiaoxiama, feel free to speak." Ma Xiangyang said, "I have no objections to rock, paper, scissors. However, I have a small request. That is, I hope that no matter who gets this box, they will open it and let us see what is inside. What does everyone think?" Yanming Jusher pondered for a moment and nodded in agreement. Everyone else also had the same thought. They would naturally know what their treasure was when they returned. The thing inside the box might not be theirs, so they had to take a look. Afterwards, Yanming Jusher arranged the order of the game. It was still the same order as before. Misty School and Wan Jianfeng were in one group, while Yanming Jusher and the Tan family were in the other group. Misty School's Wen Wenhai and Xueqing looked at each other. Wen Wenhai nodded toward Xueqing and smiled encouragingly. At the same time, his face was full of awkwardness. Xueqing walked forward and arrived in front of the square table. Only she knew why her senior brother's face was full of awkwardness. Anyone who had played this game with her since they were young and lost to her since they were young would feel embarrassed whenever this game was mentioned. Wan Jianfeng only had Ma Xiangyang, so he naturally wouldn't feel at ease letting Situping come up. In fact, even if he felt at ease letting Situping play, clan leader Situ wouldn't dare. Seeing the two come forward, Yanming Jusher said, "The rules of rock, paper, scissors are: scissors beats paper, paper beats rock, and rock beats scissors. Before we start, we need to cover everyone's eyes with a scarf. When I count 1, 2, 3, everyone will play at the same time. Then take off the scarf and we will see who wins." Xueqing and Ma Xiangyang both used scissors in the first round. In the second round, Xueqing still used scissors while Ma Xiangyang used paper. When Ma Xiangyang took off his scarf for the second time, he retreated regretfully. Yanming Jusher and Tan Wen's contest was decided in one round. Yanming Jusher used rock while Tan Wen used scissors. The last round was the most crucial one. At this time, Yanming Jusher thought for a moment and signaled Situping to cover himself and Xueqing with a scarf. After Ma Xiangyang counted to 3, he took out scissors. After taking off his scarf, he found that Xueqing also used scissors, so he covered her with another scarf. After thinking for a moment, he took out scissors again after counting to 3. In the end, he found that his opponent was still scissors and couldn't help but be stunned. In fact, Yanming Jusher had his own selfish reasons for proposing this game. Since young, he was proficient in all kinds of miscellaneous skills, such as rock, paper, scissors, gambling, and so on. He won more than he lost, but because he dabbled too much in martial arts, he couldn't reach the peak. At this crucial moment, he found that his opponent was also an expert. His heart trembled, and he paid more attention to this game. However, in the third round, Yanming Jusher used paper, while Xueqing still used scissors. There were no changes. When Yanming Jusher pulled off his scarf, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He was trapped in a cocoon of his own making. If he had known earlier, it would have been better to compete in martial arts. Not to mention Xueqing's face full of excitement, when Wenhai took the box and was about to open it when Yanming Jusher stopped him. "Wait, put it on the table, and use your sword to pry it open from a distance to prevent any traps." When Wenhai put it on the table and used the tip of his sword to pry the box a few times, but he couldn't find the position of the lid. This time, he picked up the box again and looked at it carefully. Only then did he realize that the box was actually sealed. Then he tried to pry it open, but it didn't open. The other people also didn't open it. Yanming Jusher also picked up his dagger and tried to pry the box open, but it didn't work. In the end, he completely ignored Wen Wenhai's gaze and actually used his dagger to cut the box open, but it didn't leave any marks on the box. He finally understood why this box was thrown far away at the end of the long table. He casually returned it to Wenwenhai. Wenwenhai also carefully put the box in his arms. Seeing that there was nothing left in the hall, everyone's thoughts had already flown to the medicinal garden. Yanming Jusher brought everyone to the medicinal garden and said to everyone, "Everyone didn't prepare enough, and I don't know if we can take more herbs. I suggest that we first take some mature herbs that can be preserved. There will be 4 sets, 1 for each sect. As for the seeds and other transplants, we'll discuss it again. What do you all think?" Everyone had no objections, and then led by Yanming Jusher, they collected one by one. All the mature herbs were collected in 4 sets and packed into 4 packages, 1 for each sect. In the end, Scholar Yanming said to everyone, "Since no one has any luck, we can only comfort ourselves here in the herb garden. What we brought just now was for our respective sections. Next, each of us is only allowed to pick 3 mature herbs for ourselves." After that, Yanming Jusher took everyone to walk around each medicinal field again, and collected the herbs according to their own requirements. In fact, everyone knew about the same herbs. Most of them were hundreds of years old: ginseng, Polygonum multiflorum, Tianqi, Shanjing, and other things. After finishing this, the light in the secret plane was already a little dim. It was estimated that it should be early noon outside. Everyone only then remembered the matter of going out. It took a long time to come in, so if they went out, wouldn't it be late at night? Yanming Jusher smiled and comforted everyone. "Go out, just find a place to go. As long as you go straight, you can go out. However, looking at the sky, it's time to go, let's leave." After that, everyone picked up their packages and followed Yanming Jusher to find 2 jujube trees in the middle of the jujube forest, and went straight away. Everyone didn't know that when they just walked into the jujube forest, a snake-like monster's head poked out of the high-temperature lake. It looked at the place where they were going for a moment, and then retracted into the water, leaving only the ripples on the lake. Chapter 16. By the time everyone left the Swanjujube forest, the sky had already darkened. Their journey back had been uneventful. The moment they walked out of the dense forest, both Yanming Jusher and the remaining juniors let out a long sigh of relief. This harmonious treasure hunting trip had finally come to a successful conclusion. They had kept their lives, completed their mission, and obtained the treasure. This treasure naturally belonged to them. When they thought of this, everyone's hearts felt warm, as if a cat was tickling their hearts. Yanming Jusher looked at everyone with a smile and said, "Everyone, Xiaoxia, please be patient. Wait for us to reach the Thumb Peak before we speak in detail." Then he led everyone back to the Thumb Peak. Everyone sat in a circle in front of the Crouching Ox Rock. Yanming Jusher opened his mouth and said, "Everyone, Xiaoxia, this mission has been successfully completed. Next, please bring back the results of this mission to your respective schools and sections. In addition, please bring back my greetings. Everyone, please raise your heads on the 2nd of February, and meet at the same old place. Let us drink and chat merrily." After he finished speaking, he didn't seem to want to stay any longer. Without waiting for anyone to speak, he cupped his hands and used his qinggong to leave down the mountain. The remaining people looked at each other and nodded. The Tam brothers were the first to walk away in their unique way, followed by Wenwenhai and Xueqing. They cupped their hands to Ma Xiangyang and Situping, and turned to leave. Suddenly, Wenwenhai seemed to think of something and stopped. He said to Situping, "Chief Situ, I was passing by Lu Town the day before yesterday and poked my nose into other people's business and saved a group of farmers. I'm afraid I've offended you in any way. I hope Chief Situ will be magnanimous enough to forgive me." Situping was also a quick-witted person and hurriedly returned the greeting. "Our clan's subordinates have been rude in any way. Please forgive them, Xiaoxia. If something like this happens again in the future, I hope that Xiaoxia will take action again, and help me maintain the clan's reputation." Wenwenhai smiled and said, of course. We'll meet again someday." After he finished speaking, he and his junior sister quickly left the way they came. In the blink of an eye, only 2 people were left on the Crouching Ox Rock. At this moment, Situping felt a little uneasy in his heart. Fortunately, Ma Xiangyang spoke up at this moment. "Sect leader Situ, I won't say anything else. Since you know about this matter and are also involved, please follow me to Myriad Sword Peak as a guest for a period of time. Everything will be decided by my sword lord. How about it? Situping nodded. I'll follow Xiaoxia's instructions. Then he followed Ma Xiangyang back the way they came. For a moment, the area around the Crouching Ox Rock was deserted. It was already dusk. Just as a few people from the Jianghu were galloping on their horses, Zhang Xiaohua and Butcher Lu had also rushed back to the Guozhuang house. Lu Qian and Lu Yeye were originally sitting in the Zhang family's small house and chatting. At the same time, they were also helping Guo Sufei with some needlework. When Butcher Lu approached, Lu Yeye happened to raise her head and look outside. Her gaze passed over the short walls of the Zhang family's small courtyard. When she saw the sturdy figure that she had been looking outside the door for an entire day, and had lost count of how many times she had looked outside, Lu Yeye could no longer hold it in. Wah! She burst into tears and ran out, throwing herself into Butcher Lu's arms. Father! Her tears were like pearls falling onto a jade plate, dripping down in a pitter-patter. Butcher Lu hugged his daughter and patted her shoulder with heartache. His own eyes were also red. He had thought that he could let his daughter go out and have fun during the new year, but he did not expect such a thing to happen. It seemed like his daughter was scared out of her wits. Lu Qian, who walked out after Butcher Lu, was also teary-faced. After the incident, she finally saw her family after so long. She could no longer control her emotions. Zhang Kai also walked out of the house with crutches and invited Butcher Lu into the house. With so many people coming in, the narrow central room seemed even more crowded. Fortunately, the people from the same village went home first after exchanging some pleasantries. Zhang Kai sent them to the door and thanked them profusely. Zhang Xiaohua also returned to the small house to visit her two older brothers. Zhang Xiaohu and Zhang Xiaolong's injuries were more serious. At that time, they had blocked Zhang Kai inside for their father's sake. 80% of the vicious servants' kicks and punches had landed on their bodies. However, Xiaohu did not suffer any fractures. At this moment, he was lying on the Kong bed and listlessly talking to his older brother. Xiaolong's injuries were similar to Xiaohu's, but his arm was fractured after all. Last night, he was tortured by the veterinarian, Old Chun, and woke up in pain. He had been in a daze the entire day, and could not hide his listlessness. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua come in, Zhang Xiaohu asked, Lu Qian's family is here? Zhang Xiaohua said, yes, they just entered the house. Zhang Xiaohu asked again, is there no one else? Xiaohua asked curiously, who else is there? Xiaohu said, the matchmaker. Zhang Xiaohua was at a loss. Zhang Xiaolong laughed and said, don't listen to second brother's nonsense. Zhang Xiaohua immediately understood what was going on and joked, soon, they won't come today. They'll have to come tomorrow. It takes time to prepare a betrothal gift. No matter what, we have to thank our brave and righteous big brother. Think about it, 20 to 30 villains. Big brother, you're angry for a woman. Sister Lu Qian is already touched. If she doesn't give her heart to you, the world will age because of love. This time, it was Zhang Xiaohu's turn to be puzzled. Why would the world age because of love? Zhang Xiaohua said proudly, if the heavens have feelings, the heavens will also age. Big brother's feelings will move the heavens and the earth. Zhang Xiaohu retorted, why are you showing off? What betrothal gift? It's called dowry. Besides, Lu Qian's father is a teacher. This future sister-in-law has read thousands of books. Big brother will be influenced by her, and will be more scholarly than you. Zhang Xiaolong couldn't keep his face and couldn't help but scold Zhang Xiaohua. What does a brat like you know? Don't talk nonsense with second brother. We brothers are just having fun. Don't drag Lu Qian into this. Wouldn't it be bad if someone heard? Just as they were talking, someone came in from the central room. A crisp and slightly hoarse voice said, who's talking about my sister? Why are you talking nonsense? I just happened to hear it. The three brothers raised their heads. It turned out that Lu Yeye had brought Butcher Lu to see them. They saw Butcher Lu's eyes smiling as he looked at them. Lu Yeye also had a teasing expression. Behind them, Lu Qian's face was flushed red. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. As the host, Zhang Kai fell behind them with his walking stick. He didn't listen carefully to their conversation. When Zhang Xiaohua saw them come in, she jumped down from the Kong bed. Just as she was about to clean the Kong bed and invite Butcher Lu to sit down, Lu Qian and Lu Yeye nimbly tidied up before her and helped Butcher Lu sit down. It seemed that on the day that Zhang Xiaohua wasn't here, the two girls had tidied up the room more than once. Zhang Xiaohua's eyes widened as she thought. Today, did the two sisters feed first brother and second brother? Seeing a group of people suddenly barge in, Zhang Xiaohu didn't know what to feel. Zhang Xiaolong's face turned red, as if he had done something wrong. Zhang Xiaohu sat up and was about to get down from the Kong bed when Butcher Lu pressed him down and said kindly, "Nephew is still recuperating. Don't move." Zhang Xiaohu struggled for a bit, but couldn't break free. He could only lie down obediently. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the forced kindness on his face and cursed in her heart. Zhang Xiaolong also wanted to get up, but it was inconvenient for him to do so with one hand. He tried but couldn't get up. Lu Qian hesitated for a moment and went over to support his shoulder. She helped him up. The two of them looked at each other and then separated as if they had been electrocuted. Butcher Lu also saw it, and his smile bloomed like a flower. He said to Zhang Xiaolong, "Nephew is really righteous, to be able to step forward in front of a bully and save my daughter and niece. Old Lu salutes you." As he spoke, he got down from the Kong bed and bowed deeply to Zhang Xiaolong. Zhang Xiaolong quickly reached out his hand and said, "Don't be like this, uncle. It's what I should do. Aren't you shortening my lifespan by doing this? Xiaohua, hurry and help uncle up." Zhang Xiaohu also took the opportunity to get up. Zhang Xiaohua quickly held Butcher Lu back, but he wasn't as strong as Butcher Lu. This salute was finished. Zhang Xiaolong was at a loss again. He turned to look at Lu Qian as if asking for help. Lu Qian didn't dare to speak, and neither did Lu Yeye. Zhang Kai spoke. "Uncle, don't be so polite with them. Young people are very hot-blooded. Weren't we like this when we were young? There's no need to be so polite. The children's injuries aren't serious. They'll be fine after a bit of rest. Let's go outside and drink some wine." Butcher Lu stopped talking and beamed with joy, saying, "Heroes are still young. We're all old. All right, you young people have a good chat. I won't disturb you anymore. We old people are going to drink." As he finished speaking, he turned around and went back to the central room. Zhang Kai also followed, leaving Lu Qian and Lu Yeye in the Zhang brothers' small room. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Lu Qian's peach blossom face and Lu Yeye's eyes darting around. She felt the awkward atmosphere in the room and immediately said, "Sister Lu Qian, you're really beautiful today. You guys talk, I'm going out to play." As she finished speaking, she ran away, leaving behind a single man and woman. The feelings between men and women were very strange. Zhang Xiaolong and Lu Qian met once in the cloth shop. If they hadn't met Lu Zhen's gang of bullies, they probably wouldn't have met a second time in this lifetime. Lu Zhen's disaster highlighted Zhang Xiaolong's hot-blooded side and gave Lu Qian an excellent impression. Now, in just a few hours of getting along with Zhang Xiaolong, Lu Qian really felt a little attached to Zhang Xiaolong. Thinking that there was such a person who would take care of her for the rest of her life, perhaps it was a fate arranged by God. Looking at Zhang Xiaolong's handsome face, although tanned by the wind and sun, he had a masculine aura that her brother did not have. Lu Qian's heart became more and more scheming. Butcher Lu stayed the night at the Zhang residence. It was a silent night. The next morning, Zhang Kai accompanied Butcher Lu to talk about farming and mulberry seeds. Guo Sufei accompanied Lu Qian and Lu Yeye to Zhang Xiaohua's room to take care of the injured brothers. At this time, the more Guo Sufei looked at Lu Qian, the more she liked her. No matter if it was her looks, her figure, or her ability to do housework, there was nothing to nitpick about. This girl actually had a lot of housekeeping skills that she didn't know. Early in the morning, Lu Qian helped her get a few pots of plants and placed them in the central room. She really was a good daughter-in-law candidate. Chapter 17. When Lu Qian's father and brother arrived at the Zhang residence, it was already late in the morning. Butcher Lu was basking in the sun with Zhang Kai in the courtyard as they chatted. The walls of the Zhang residence's courtyard were too short, so Butcher Lu could see Mr. Lu and Lu Kai from afar. Both of them were dressed in new clothes. Lu Kai followed behind his father, holding a few huge gift boxes in his hands. Butcher Lu quickly got up and called out to Zhang Kai before going out to welcome his brother. Zhang Kai rushed into the house and shouted, "Mother, Lu Qian's father is here." When Lu Qian heard this shout, she didn't throw away her needlework like Lu Yeye and rush out of the house. Instead, she carefully placed her half-finished work on the table and waited for Guo Sufei to leave first before she came out. When Lu Qian walked into the courtyard, Butcher Lu and Lu Yeye had already escorted her father and brother to the gate of the fence. Zhang Kai was there to welcome them with his walking stick. After a round of introductions and greetings, Lu Qian walked in front of her father and brother and bowed. Mr. Lu held his daughter's hand and carefully looked at his daughter's expression. He saw that the familiar face didn't have any trace of what happened the day before yesterday. There was no panic or fear in her eyes, only slightly red eyes. Mr. Lu couldn't help but feel guilty. It was all his fault. He patted his daughter's shoulder and said, "It's been hard on you, child." Lu Qian wiped her eyes and said with a smile, "Daughter is fine. It's all thanks to Brother Xiaolong's family's help that we escaped from the tiger's den." Mr. Lu gestured for Lu Kai to hand over the gift boxes, and said to Zhang Kai and Guo Sufei, "I can't thank you enough for your kindness. These small gifts aren't enough to show my gratitude. I hope our benefactors will accept them." Zhang Kai hurriedly pushed the gift boxes back and said politely, "We just happened to be there and didn't do much. In the end, it was someone else who helped us." Mr. Lu insisted on handing it over, saying, "It's all thanks to you guys. If it weren't for your help, my family's child would have met with a calamity long ago. Those two Xiaoxia might not have been able to see them." When Butcher Lu saw the two of them pushing the gift back and forth, he couldn't help but feel anxious. He reached out to take it and said, "You don't have to be so courteous. Old brother Zhang, my eldest brother's kind intentions, you don't have to refuse." After he finished speaking, he carried the gift box into the central room. Mr. Lu smiled and said to Zhang Kai, "This second brother of mine has a fiery temper. I hope old brother Zhang doesn't mind." Zhang Kai also smiled and said, "There's no harm in that. Your younger brother is a sentimental person. We're just being a little overboard. Please, let's talk inside." Zhang Kai led Mr. Lu into the central room. The central room of the Zhang family was very small and didn't have many chairs. Thus, there was no distinction between the host and the guest. Everyone sat down as they pleased. After Mr. Lu sat down, he once again expressed his gratitude for the Zhang family's kindness. He took out some scattered silver from his robes and placed it on the small table in the room, saying, "Old brother Zhang, your family's injuries were caused by the bullies saving my daughter. It's reasonable for us to take responsibility. You can take this silver to seek medical treatment. Our family is poor and can only take this much. Please forgive us, old brother." This time, Zhang Kai was determined not to accept it. He said, "Xiahua has already told you what happened. At the time, the bullies had already paid the silver, but we were afraid that they would come back and ask for more. We didn't dare to use it. That Xiaoxiawan who saved us has already given us a lot of silver. It's enough to treat our injuries and buy medicine. We absolutely cannot take this silver." Lu Kai said from the side, "Old Uncle Zhang, this is this and this is this. We should give this silver. We can't just stand by and watch you guys get injured while saving my little sisters. How can we not pay for the medical expenses? What kind of logic is that?" Butcher Lu also scratched his head and said, "Old brother Zhang, you should just take it. In a few days, I'll also give you some silver and bring some meat over." Zhang Kai said, "My two brothers, please don't do this. We didn't save people for the silver. Moreover, we already have the silver to treat our injuries. We absolutely cannot accept this." Thus, these people were given to each other by each other. After a while, Zhang Kai refused to give in no matter what. At this time, Lu Qian opened her mouth and said to Mr. Lu, "Father, since old Uncle Zhang doesn't want to take this silver, you should take it back first. I have an idea, what do you think?" Mr. Lu said, "All right, you've always been exceptionally intelligent since you were young. What good idea do you have this time? Lu Qian said. Old Uncle Zhang and his family got injured while saving us. The two of us will stay here to take care of old Uncle Zhang and his family until their injuries are completely healed. Firstly, old Uncle Zhang's family is injured, and they still need to take care of the elderly. Antigua can't handle everything alone. Secondly, old Uncle Zhang and his family can't move freely. They also need people to take care of them. This is what we should do. What do you think? Mr. Lu thought for a moment and said, It's my fault. Tianer's idea is very good. What do you think? Second brother. Butcher Lu patted his chest and said, Very good, very good. I think so too. Lu Yeye also nodded in agreement. The matter was settled like this for now. Then Mr. Lu and Lu Kai went into the inner room. Zhang Xiaolong and Zhang Xiaohu were still lying on the bed. When they heard Butcher Lu's shout, the two of them wanted to get up. However, they were stopped by Guosufei and the others. Now that they saw someone come in, they knew it was Lu Qian's father and brother. They quickly got up. This time, Lu Qian didn't come up to help Zhang Xiaolong. Guosufei carefully helped her son to sit on the Kong. Only then did Mr. Lu carefully size up this courageous young man. Zhang Xiaolong was a very masculine young man. He was about the same age as Lu Kai and looked very ordinary. He had thick eyebrows and big eyes like Zhang Kai. However, his eyes were bruised and the corners of his mouth were cracked. However, from the determination in his eyes, one could see that he was a down-to-earth person. The clothes he was wearing weren't new either. They were patched up, but they were very clean and looked very comfortable. Zhang Xiaolong's arm was still in a splint, so he couldn't move casually. His hands were placed in front of his chest. Looking at this pair of slightly rough hands, one could tell that he was an expert in farming. Mr. Lu looked at this young man who was about the same age as his son, but had a completely different temperament. He couldn't help but secretly nod. Only such an outstanding child could stand up for others when they were in danger. Zhang Xiaolong saw Mr. Lu staring at him and couldn't help but feel anxious. He didn't know what to do. Mr. Lu looked at him for a while before speaking. He thanked him for saving his daughter and hoped that he would recover well. Then, he spoke for a while before leaving the small room. As he walked, he said to Zhang Kai, Brother Zhang, you have a good son. You are blessed. Zhang Kai smiled from ear to ear. He didn't forget to be humble, even while leaning on his walking stick. Same to you. Your son is also very, very good. Seeing that it was almost noon, Zhang Kai ordered Guosufei to arrange wine and food to entertain Mr. Lu and his group. The Zhang family's financial situation was much worse than Mr. Lu's, so the food they ate was also very ordinary. Zhang Kai expressed his apologies. Mr. Lu and Butcher Lu were both forthright people, so they didn't mind when they chatted. They toasted and ate quite a bit. Only Zhang Xiaohua was the happiest. She had meat to eat for 2 consecutive days. She couldn't wait for these days to come a few more times. After the meal, Mr. Lu and his group chatted with Zhang Kai for a while. Taking advantage of the fact that it was still early, they hurried back to Bali Gully with the 2 girls. The Zhang family only had one family of injured people lying in bed. Fortunately, it was winter now. Usually, at this time of the year, they would stay at home to keep warm. They didn't need to plow the fields or weed the fields. However, this afternoon, everyone felt that something was missing. When the sky gradually darkened and Guosufei was preparing to cook, she realized that there was less help from the 2 girls in the family today. She also had to cook less food. She couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. The liveliness in this family was strange. There were originally only 6 people in the family. After so many years, they didn't feel anything. In just a few days, with the addition of 2 girls, the family actually had more liveliness than before. After these few days, everyone left. The liveliness naturally disappeared. Only then did she realize that liveliness was really good. She actually missed the few days when there were more outsiders. After hastily cooking, Zhang Xiaohua and her mother served the 2 brothers. Everyone sat under the oil lamp. Guosufei said, I wonder if Lu Qian and the rest have eaten? Zhang Kai said, looking at the sky, they probably just got home. They won't be able to cook in time. I guess they'll have to eat at Butcher Lu's place. Zhang Xiaohua said, definitely. Maybe there'll be streaky pork tonight. Guo Sufei said, by the way, Xiaohua, you've been to their house. What's their house like? Zhang Xiaohua described the situation of Lu Qian and Lu Yeye's house according to her own knowledge. In fact, Guo Sufei had always wanted to ask about Lu Qian's family situation, but it wasn't easy to ask from Lu Qian. Yesterday, when she saw Butcher Lu, she didn't have the chance to ask. Today, when she saw Mr. Lu and Lu Kai's behavior and temperament, she felt a knot in her heart. Now that she heard Zhang Xiaohua's words, her heart was even more knotted. She frowned and said to Zhang Kai worriedly, Old man, do you think Lu Qian will like our family Xiaolong? No one interrupted. Zhang Xiaolong's face was a little gloomy. Zhang Kai said, This depends on fate. It's useless for us to talk about it. Let's just leave it to fate. Zhang Xiaohu said, Mother, I feel that Lu Qian is very meticulous. She should have read a lot of books. Needless to say, she's educated and reasonable. She can also do a lot of housework. She's really good. She's much better than the energetic Lu Yeye. Looking at how she takes care of Big Brother, she's a little interesting. Zhang Xiaohua said, Second brother, this daughter-in-law has to be married one by one. Don't be too anxious. Even if you don't mention Lu Yeye, Mother will consider it for you. Zhang Xiaohu's face was a little embarrassed. He kicked Zhang Xiaohua and said, We're talking about Big Brother. Don't change the topic. There's nothing between me and Lu Yeye. Zhang Kai said, Second brother, even if there's something between you and her, you have to think about your big brother first. Looking at our family's situation, it's already very difficult to find a wife. You should wait a little longer. Guo Sufei interrupted and said, Old man, don't you still have those banknotes? Zhang Kai interrupted her and glared at her. Don't mention that. You have to return it to someone else. Then everyone felt bored. Not long after, they blew out the oil lamp and went to sleep. Zhang Xiaolong tossed and turned all night. He couldn't fall asleep. He didn't know if it was because of the pain in his body or because of the thoughts in his heart. However, his tossing and turning didn't affect Zhang Xiaohua's dream at all. Chapter 18. When Wenhai was very tired, the whip in his hand mechanically whipped the horse's butt, hoping that it would run faster. Beside him, Xueqing's face was covered with a veil, so her expression couldn't be seen. She was also urging the horse she was riding. When Wenhai occasionally looked back at Xueqing and encouraged her, Junior sister, hold on a little longer, we'll soon reach our territory, we can rest then. Xueqing replied, I know, senior brother, let's go quickly. When the two came down from Stoneman Peak, they didn't pay too much attention to it at first. The mission was already completed, so all they had to do was bring the things back to the school. They were even immersed in the joy of getting the medicine. But when they got on the horses and saw the two best horses in the school, the two realized why their master wanted them to ride such handsome horses. At the same time, when Wenhai also remembered his master's inconspicuous words, hurry back. At the same time, they also realized the danger they were in. Not to mention whether the other three factions had other intentions. Even if a normal Jianghu sect got wind of the news, or discovered the things they were carrying, those were priceless treasures in the eyes of Jianghu people. An ordinary man's wealth is his own ruin, and the two of them would have a hard time keeping their lives. The two couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. They looked at each other and got on their horses, not stopping for even a moment. They whipped their whips and galloped away. Just like that, the two of them galloped on their horses for a day and a night without rest. Fortunately, they were martial artists, so their bodies were well trained. A normal person would have long since broken their body. It was near noon, and the two of them were hurrying along. In the distance, they saw a tea shop on the side of the road. These tea shops were mostly simple tents or thatched roofs set up on the side of the road. They were open on all sides and provided simple tea and food for passers-by to rest. When they were about to reach the tea shop, Xueqing couldn't help but say to Wenhai, Senior brother, why don't we rest for a bit? We'll reach our Misty School's territory in the time it takes to eat a meal, so it should be safe here. Wenhai was also a bit tempted, so he slowed down and gradually approached the tea shop. However, when Wenhai changed his mind and said to Xueqing with a smile, "Junior sister, it's only the time it takes to eat a meal, we'll be there soon. We've been on the road for so long, we don't have to worry about this little bit of distance. Let's hurry for a bit and rest when we reach our territory." Xueqing said, "All right, senior brother. We won't do things that will waste all our efforts. Let's go." After they finished speaking, the tea shops SSSS and the horses S and their legs worse SSSSS. The two of them were leisurely sipping tea from the rough teacups on the table. When Wenhai's and Xueqing's horses slowed down in front of the tea shop and then sped up again, they saw it all. After Wenhai's horse passed, the man with the sword looked at the dark-skinned man opposite him and said with a smile, "Old Six, don't drink anymore. Let's go. I didn't expect Ahai to be so cautious. He didn't even enter this tea shop. Third brother has taken in a good disciple." Old Six said, "That's right, fourth brother. None of our disciples are as cautious as Ahai. It's a pity that his talent is limited and it's hard for him to make any progress in his martial arts. Otherwise, his potential would be limitless. AI, it's just a pity for these two good horses." After they finished speaking, the two of them threw down the money for the tea and brought their own horses to chase after them. However, they didn't know that the eyes of a plainly dressed passerby behind them flashed. He muttered in his heart, "What's going on? Two of the 6 misty tigers are actually here to receive them?" After the two of them left with their horses, he also paid the bill and quietly followed behind. On the other hand, when Wenhai spurred his horse forward, in the time it took to finish a meal, he saw that there were more and more people. The number of stalls on the main road had also increased. Pingyang City could be seen in the distance. Suddenly, he heard the horse below him whining. Its 4 legs gave way and it fell to the ground. When Wenhai felt his body sinking, he immediately patted the horse's back and used his body to jump off the horse. Seeing this, Xueqing quickly pulled the reins and slowly stopped his horse. He saw that the horse was lying on the ground, foaming at the mouth. Its eyes were also slowly closing. It had died of exhaustion. Xueqing also hurriedly looked at his horse. His horse was not in a better state. Its 4 legs were trembling nonstop. There was also some white foam coming out of the horse's mouth. It looked like it could not be ridden anymore. When Wenhai stood by the side of the road and looked at the horse lying on the ground, he also looked at the surrounding passers-by who were running away in panic. He thought for a while and took out a whistling arrow. He aimed it at the sky and shot it up. The whistling arrow flew into the air and let out a sharp sound. In the empty sky, it traveled very far. The sound of the whistling arrow had just passed when they heard someone calling from behind, "Ahai!" When Wenhai and Xueqing turned back and looked, they couldn't help but be delighted. It was the 2 burly men who were resting in the tea shop earlier. When the two of them rode their horses to the front, when Wenhai and Xueqing went forward and bowed, "Fourth Uncle Master and 6th Uncle Master." The two of them swung their stirrups and dismounted. They chuckled and said, "Martial nephews, there is no need to be so polite. We are here on the orders of the sect leader to welcome them. Wait a moment and they will be here." When Wenhai and Xueqing nodded in agreement, they then stood beside the 2 uncle masters and waited quietly. At this moment, the tense strings in their hearts were completely relaxed. Sure enough, not long after, a group of people galloped from afar. The first was a scholar with a square headscarf on his head. He was about 40 years old, with a white face and no beard. He wore white clothes and looked very young, as if he was reading. Following closely behind him was a beautiful woman with a mature aura. Both of them were dressed very simply. Both of them were riding white horses. Behind them were about 10 people dressed in martial attire. Each of them was equipped with a saber and a sword. Their eyes were shining. Some of them even had high protruding temples. At first glance, one could tell that they were masters of the martial arts world. These people urged their horses while looking around, vigilantly looking around. When the two of them arrived, they dismounted from their horses. When Wenhai and Xueqing went forward and bowed, "Greetings to Master." This scholar was actually the head of the Misty School, Openg. He was so unremarkable. The two of them then bowed to the beautiful woman. "Greetings to Master's wife." The beautiful woman looked at them with a smile and didn't say anything. Peng then said, "Alright, Hai Qing, you have worked hard. No need to be so polite. You know that master's wife rarely pays attention to the matters of the sect. Today can be considered an outing." The two people behind Hai also went forward and bowed. "Greetings to senior brother sect leader and sister-in-law." Peng reached out and helped them up. "You have worked hard as well." The fourth brother stood up and said, "It wasn't hard. We were just tasting tea. Your disciple didn't even enter the tea shop. He is very cautious." Hai then understood. He hurriedly said, "Disciple didn't know that martial uncle was here. Otherwise I would have left with martial uncle." He then said to his master, "Disciple didn't let you down and escaped unscathed with junior sister." But this horse Peng laughed out loud and said, No matter how handsome the horse is, it can't be more important than you. As long as you come back safely, it is better than anything else." He then said to the people behind him, "Leave a horse for Qing, and then deal with this place." After he finished speaking, he led Hai, Qing, and the other three people back on their horses. He only left two people behind to deal with the dead horse. He didn't even mention a word about the things on Hai's body. The passerby who followed them here witnessed the entire process, and was even more surprised. He didn't think much and just mounted his horse and galloped in another direction. He must be rushing back to the sect to report this matter. Something that was worth Peng coming out to greet must be something big. Hai and the others followed the large group, and galloped towards Pingyang City. When they reached Pingyang City, they didn't enter the city. Instead, they went around the city gate, and went in another direction. After a while they arrived at a villa outside the city. This villa was built against the mountain. In front of the villa, there were scattered residences. The houses were high and low and were arranged in a picturesque disorder. Many people were busy with their own affairs. When they saw the large group of people coming over, they made way for them. At the same time, they also saluted Peng, who was on the horse. Further in was a straight main road. Beside it were huge trees. After crossing the main road, they came face to face with a luxurious building. There were two large words on the building, ethereal. It was the same word as the one on the token that Qing gave to the Zhang family. However, these two words were more indescribably elegant. After crossing the building, they saw a high platform. There were more than 10 steps leading to an open door. There were already more than 10 people who looked like disciples of the sect waiting respectfully in front of the door and on the steps. In front of the group was a young man with a fair complexion and a gentle temperament. He was about the same age as Hai. He was the eldest senior brother of the sect, Zhang Qingyue. When Peng and the others got down from their horses, Zhang Qingyue led the group and said in unison, "Welcome, sect leader." Peng and the others got down from their horses. Someone took the reins from their hands. Peng said, "Alright, everyone has worked hard. You can all disperse. Disciples who are participating in the advancement test, hurry up and practice. There's not much time left for you." All the disciples said, "Yes, we will follow sect leader's instructions." Then, Zhang Qingyue followed Peng and the others through the door. The others were busy with their own affairs. These disciples had been gathered together by the sect leader a few days ago. They were on guard day and night, thinking that something big would happen. However, they didn't expect that today, the sect leader would go out and announce that the alert was cancelled. The disciples couldn't help but be confused. However, this was the sect leader's business. It was related to their future advancement test. If they could advance, their status and treatment in the sect would be different. They might even be able to learn more advanced martial arts. This was their business. As for other things, these disciples wouldn't ask too much. Peng led the group to the meeting hall. Peng's wife saw that they had matters to attend to and excused herself. The others followed Peng into the meeting hall. Chapter 19. The conference hall was a large hall with many chairs. It was usually the place where the higher-ups of the sect came to discuss affairs. Today, there were very few people in the conference hall, but the atmosphere was particularly serious. Peng originally sent off his wife with a smile, but as soon as he entered the conference hall, He immediately changed his face and became very serious. The few people who followed behind also looked solemn. Although Wen Wenhai and Xueqing were Openg's personal disciples and direct subordinates, they rarely came to the discussion hall. After entering, they naturally followed the rules and stood not far from the entrance, not daring to move recklessly. The fourth and sixth of the 6 Misty Tigers and Openg's chief disciple Zhang Qingyue stood in front of their seats according to the usual rules, and waited for Openg to sit down first. Openg walked to the innermost part of the hall, where there was a large chair. He turned and sat down, facing the crowd. When they saw him sit down, they also carefully sat down in their own seats. Openg looked at the crowd, and then said to Wen Wenhai and Xueqing, "Come over and find a seat." Wen Wenhai and Xueqing said in unison, "Thank you, master." Then they found 2 chairs and sat down. Openg said, "You can tell me what happened." Wen Wenhai and Xueqing looked at each other, and Wen Wenhai said, "Yes, master, this is what happened." Later, Wen Wenhai told Openg everything that happened after he and his junior sister left the Misty School and met the 2 martial uncles, no matter how big or small, including saving Zhang Kai's family. Xueqing didn't say anything about the token he gave to Zhang Kai and the 3 herbs they collected in the medicine garden in the secret plane, but then he added, "There are 2 more things that need to be explained. Please allow me to report later." After thinking about it, Openg nodded in agreement. Then, Wen Wenhai and Xueqing put a brocade box and a small flat box in their arms, as well as the herbs collected from the secret plane on the square table next to Openg. Openg did not open the box. Instead, he said to Lao Si, "You take care of the matter first. We will wait for you." Lao Si said, "Yes." Then he got up and left in a hurry. Amongst the people present, only Wen Wenhai and Xueqing revealed a puzzled expression while the others remained silent. Not long after, Old Fourth came back. He nodded at Openg and sat down again. At this moment, Openg said, "Everyone has worked hard. After such a long time of hard work, there is finally a reward. Let us see what treasures there are here." At the end of his words, a smile actually appeared on his face. Wen Wenhai and Xueqing didn't know that sect leader Openg was usually amiable and had a warm smile on his face. However, he was always very serious in the conference hall. No one had ever seen him smile before. However, he was behaving like this today. This made the few people who knew the situation feel itchy in their hearts. Their eyes were also filled with eagerness. A treasure that could make the sect leader smile was, of course, a great treasure. Openg first took the box and carefully opened it. He saw a small booklet placed inside. He took the booklet out. It was soft to the touch, neither paper nor silk. He didn't know what material this booklet was made of. On the cover, there was a large character, sword. The way it was written was actually similar to Misty. However, this character revealed a swift and fierce killing intent. Openg looked at this character and casually opened the booklet. He flipped through the contents and placed it to one side. He narrowed his eyes and pondered. He didn't say anything and neither did he express any opinion. After a long time, Openg once again looked at the box and carefully observed it. Suddenly his eyes flashed. He reached into the box and took out the compartment under the booklet, revealing 3 small bottles arranged side by side. This brocade box actually had 2 layers. The compartment for the booklet only took up a third of the box's height. Openg was even more careful as he took out a bottle. This bottle was actually carved out of jade. The bottle's mouth was sealed with an unknown object. On the bottle's surface there were 3 words, "Qi-generating pill." Openg's heart burst with ecstasy. This qi-generating pill was something that only existed a few hundred years ago. It was used to increase one's internal force. Its formula had long been lost. According to the sect's ancient records, taking a qi-generating pill could increase one's power by 30 years. If he took one, then his power. Openg thought about it, and his hand unexpectedly trembled a little. He carefully put the bottle back into the box and took out another bottle. This bottle was exactly the same as the previous one, but on top of it was written, "Bone Strengthening Pill." Openg frowned a little. What was the use of this? Bone strengthening? There was no record of it in the sect's ancient records. However, to be able to be placed together with the qi-generating pill, It was certainly an extraordinary treasure. When there was time, he would ask the other 3 sections. Perhaps there would be records in their ancient records. He carefully put the bottle back. Soon after, Openg took out the last bottle. When he saw the 3 words on the bottle, Openg couldn't help but stand up. His eyes were wide open. Everyone in the discussion hall also immediately stood up. They didn't know what inconceivable thing the gang master had seen. Openg calmed his thoughts. Resisting his excitement, he sat back in his chair and waved his hand for everyone to sit back down. At this time, he was a little regretful. He regretted that he shouldn't have let Wenwenhai and Xueqing enter the secret room alone. These things were now placed in front of everyone. They couldn't not let them know. However, these things were too precious. It wasn't that he didn't trust everyone, but once the news was leaked out, it would bring about a sect annihilation disaster. Openg couldn't help but close his eyes and ponder. Everyone looked at the gang master's reaction strangely. He was startled, which was quite abnormal. When Openg finally made up his mind, he opened his eyes and immediately restored his original expression. He put the bottle back into the box and picked up the booklet again. He handed it to Zhang Qingyue and said, "Let your martial uncles take a look. You guys should also take a look." The booklet was passed around in everyone's hands. Openg said, "Qingyue, make a copy of this sword manual and give it to your 6th martial uncle. This sword manual will be placed in our sect's library pavilion and carefully preserved." Zhang Qingyue nodded in agreement. Then Openg said to Old Six, "Old Six, you are in charge of training the disciples. Find a few of them with good aptitude to cultivate this sword manual. In the future, our Misty School will have another sword manual." Old Six said, "Yes, gang master. I will definitely do my best to bring this sword manual to greater heights." Openg nodded without saying anything. Then Openg said to everyone, "What happened today, you must keep it a secret. It will be our Misty School's top secret. Especially what I will tell you later. I will inform Boss, Old 2 and Old 5. Everyone left and stood up, bowing in agreement. Then Openg told everyone the names of the pills in the first 2 bottles. Everyone's eyes were filled with envy. It was really good stuff. Only they didn't know how many pills were in the bottles. Would they be able to get one? Finally, Openg said, "There is another bottle. There is also a pill in it. It is the legendary life-prolonging pill. Only I don't know if it is true." As soon as his voice fell, everyone's expression was indescribably strange. It must be said that the life-prolonging pill was different from the qi-generating pill. Everyone in Jianghu knew that it was a legendary panacea that could increase one's power. Everyone was eager to get one. It was also not like the bone-strengthening pill. Even the Misty School, which had a long history, didn't know what it was. The life-prolonging pill was not only known by Jianghu people, but also by ordinary people. It was a legend within legends. It was said that the life-prolonging pill could increase one's life by 10 years. But such a miraculous thing had been said for thousands of years, yet it had never appeared. In fact, smart people didn't even need to think to know how long a person's life was. No one knew if this life-prolonging pill could extend one's life by 10 years. If you took it, who knew if it really extended your life? Moreover, who would give such a miraculous medicine to someone who was about to die? Over time, everyone treated it as a joke. They treated it as leftover material compiled by storytellers. It was precisely this kind of senseless joke material that had suddenly appeared in the Misty School's conference hall's hall. Together with the qi-generating pill, this kind of Jianghu panacea, the same packaging. No matter who saw it, they also didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was it real? Was it fake? However, everyone knew that regardless of whether it was real or fake, if it was known by the other famous sects, there would be no one who wouldn't covet it. This Misty School would never have a day of peace in the future. Extermination. That wasn't impossible. No wonder the faction leader was so serious. It seemed that this matter would end here. However, would the other 3 sects obtain the same thing? Everyone, including Openg, began to question this. Following that, Openg once again opened the package containing the medicinal ingredients. Once again he was stunned. Hundreds of years old ginseng, 7 fields, shanjing, Chinese knotweed. He couldn't name many of them. He looked at this package, and his heart was really afraid. He had calculated everything, but he didn't expect that he would be able to obtain so many precious things this time. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have acted so reserved and mysterious. He would have directly acted himself. He also had to listen to Yanming Jusher's instructions and play rock, paper, scissors. This time, he reckoned that old fellow didn't lack any benefits. Fortunately, a Haiyan Qing had returned safely. These things also didn't have any mistakes. Otherwise, it would be too late to regret. It was no wonder that Openg had so many thoughts. What he had seen just now were all legends. Perhaps it was just a rumor. Who knew if it was true or false? Moreover, the quantity was limited after all. But now what was in front of him was the real thing. He could touch it with his hands. A few hundred years old ginseng, at a critical moment, it was a life. Coupled with other medicines, it would be even more effective. When he heard Ahai and others talk about it, he didn't care. He thought that Yanming Jusher was exaggerating. Now it seems that he should pay more attention to it. Moreover, there were still a lot of these medicines in the secret plane. He had to discuss it with several forces. Later, in the eyes of others, Openg excitedly asked Zhang Qingyue to quickly inform the hall master and elders of the pharmacy hall to come to the conference hall. Chapter 20. While waiting for the pharmacy, Openg helplessly picked up the last seemingly ordinary small box. His heart was filled with anticipation. In the short time it took to drink a cup of tea, he had seen a treasure that he had never seen before. He wondered what kind of treasure was in this box. Could it be something more magical than the life-prolonging pill? The box was cool to the touch and felt very heavy. Openg placed it in front of his eyes and carefully observed it. The whole box was one piece. He didn't know what material it was made of. There seemed to be no trace of a lid. He didn't know where to open it. Openg tried the 4 sides, pulling it up and pressing it down, but it didn't work. He couldn't bite it with his teeth, right? Openg secretly laughed at himself. He put the box back on the table, and then called everyone to come forward. Everyone looked around for a long time. Old 4 and Old 6 also came forward and tried several methods, but they didn't work. Zhang Qingyue frowned and said, "Master, do we need to use a key or something like that?" Old 6 rolled his eyes and said, "Martial nephew, if you want to use a key, there should be a keyhole. This box doesn't have a lock, and there's no secret lock or something like that. How do we use it?" Zhang Qingyue blushed a little and stood there without refuting. Wen Wenhai and Xueqing had seen this box before in the secret plane. Wen Wenhai had also tried to open it. At this time, seeing that his master and martial uncle couldn't open it, he didn't dare to propose a new idea. Instead, Xueqing looked at the box that he won with scissors, paper, scissors, and was very interested. He even shook it in his ear to hear if there was any sound inside. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Just when everyone was at their wits' end, the pharmacy hall's hall master Bai Dong and elder He Yunpu arrived at the meeting hall. After greeting the sect master and everyone else, Zhang Qingyue led them to the square table where the medicine was placed. The reaction of these 2 people was even more unexpected. It wasn't that they were not surprised, but that they were too surprised. From the moment the 2 of them saw the items in the package, their eyes didn't seem to move at all. Their feet seemed to be rooted to the ground, unable to move even half a step. Their fingers pointed at the medicinal herbs, their arms were trembling, and the saliva in their mouths was flowing, almost dripping to the ground. After the time it took to drink half a cup of tea, the 2 of them finally came back to their senses. They didn't pay attention to the laughing expressions of the people who were admiring their embarrassing state, and said to themselves, "This is a 600-year-old ginseng. This is a 600-year-old field 7. This is a 400-year-old field spirit. This is 700 years old golden thread grass?" That's right, it was exactly the same as what was recorded in the Codex of Herbs. At this time, Hall Master Bai sobered up and hurriedly said, "Sect Master, the place where these things were discovered must be kept strictly confidential. Among them, The dragon beheading grass and peacock grass can be used to concoct medicine similar to the qi-generating pill. It's recorded in our Misty Sect's ancient records. These words caused everyone's ears to perk up. Openg said, "Does the ancient records record how to concoct the qi-generating pill?" Hall Master Bai said, "No, the formula for the qi-generating pill has long been lost. What's recorded in the ancient records are only a few similar pills. The effects are limited, and the required herbs are extremely rare." Openg said, "Hall Master Bai, take these medicinal herbs to the pharmacy hall to study and see what effects they have. Also, take a detailed look at the formula for those pills similar to the qi-generating pill. Be prepared." Perhaps Openg hadn't finished speaking when Hall Master Bai had already understood tacitly. He immediately said, "I'll follow Sect Master's instructions." Then, together with Elder He carefully carried the package and left the conference hall. Openg also instructed Zhang Qingyue to deploy more people to the pharmacy hall to protect it. After Hall Master Bai and Elder He left, Openg sat back in his chair. His gaze fell on the small box on the table that he couldn't open no matter how hard he tried. After thinking about it, he still instructed Zhang Qingyue to call Hall Master Shi of the Divine Engineering Hall. The Divine Engineering Hall was the place where the Misty Sect refined weapons and concealed weapons. Hall Master Shi was the master of forging weapons in Pingyang City. Not long after, Shi Yuquan arrived at the conference hall. He observed the small box for a long time and used various methods, but he was similarly at a loss. However, he hesitated for a moment and asked Openg in a probing tone, "Sect Master, I think, why don't we let Shernyo come over and try?" Shernyo was a boorish fellow from the Misty Sect who practiced the strong King Kong hand. His martial arts weren't very good, but his strength was top-notch. In addition, he specialized in the strong King Kong hand. In terms of strength alone, he was the best in the sect. Shi Yuquan's words enlightened him. The box was only a container to store things. In order to obtain the things in the box, it was good to keep the box intact. If they couldn't keep the box and open it skillfully, then they could only use brute force to crack it. In the end, obtaining the things was the most important thing. Shernyo also arrived at the conference hall. He was a rather tall and muscular man. Standing, he was taller than everyone in the conference hall by a head. His entire body was filled with strong muscles. Looking at his honest and simple smiling face, Openg didn't say much. He just passed the small box to him and gave him an order. "Open it." Shernyo received the box and didn't say much. He used his 2 hands to pry the box open. The box didn't move at all. Then, Shernyo placed the box on the ground and took a deep breath. His 2 arms suddenly became much thicker, and his 2 fingers became thicker. Then Shernyo shouted loudly. His eyes were fixed on the box, and he used his 2 hands to slap the box. There was a muffled sound as his 2 palm leaf fan-like hands slapped the box. The box didn't shatter as everyone expected. Instead, Shernyo slapped it flat into the conference hall's stone floor. Shernyo took out the box that was slapped into the stone floor. Looking at the perfectly intact box, he scratched his head and looked at the sect master with an innocent expression. He was very depressed. He thought to himself, "What is this thing?" After sending Shernyo away, Openg was also depressed. How should he deal with this box? Suddenly his eyes lit up. He pulled out the sword hanging from his waist, but then he put it back in. The eyes of the remaining people in the conference hall also lit up. They knew that the sect master had thought of a good way to open the box. Zhang Qingyue didn't wait for Openg's orders. He said to Shi Yuquan, "Doesn't Hall Master Shi have a broken water? Why don't you give it a try?" Shi Yuquan glanced at Openg. Seeing that the sect master didn't have any objections, he said, "Sect master and everyone, please wait a moment. I'll be back soon." Not long after, Shi Yuquan came back with a simple scabbard. He said to Openg, "Sect master, let me try it first." Openg nodded in agreement. Shi Yuquan pulled out the sword from the scabbard. This sword wasn't as shiny as other swords. Instead, it had a dark surface. Occasionally, light would reflect off the surface of the sword. It was a bit dazzling, like black lightning. Shi Yuquan raised the sword and tried to cut at the corner of the box. The box didn't react. Then he took a deep breath and raised the broken water again. He slashed at the corner of the box with all his strength. However, there wasn't the cracking sound that everyone expected. There wasn't even any sound. It was as if the sword had cut through cotton. The box was still there, undamaged. Openg glanced at Shiryukuin, who was about to slash again, and said, "Give me the sword." Openg took the sword from Shiryukuin and placed the box on the ground in the small groove that the stone cow had created. Then he circulated his chi in his dantian. The color on his face kept changing. It wasn't until the 6th time that he stopped. Old 4 and Old 6 looked at him with envious eyes. They thought to themselves, Sect Master Senior Brother's ethereal divine art is so profound. He's already cultivated it to the 6th level. Openg raised his broken water and injected his Zhen Qi into the blade. The entire blade was no longer as dark as it used to be. Under the infusion of the ethereal divine exercise, there were even some changes in color. Then Openg shouted and chopped towards the box. Chapter 21. The saber in Openg's hand was like a bolt of black lightning, carrying the colors of the ethereal divine art as it shot towards the corner of the mysterious box. It was a pity that this bolt of lightning didn't come from the heavens. Broken water landed on the corner of the small box, and just like before, there was no sound. However, it was different this time. The box actually emitted a layer of light that no one could detect. It overflowed slightly, and the saber in Openg's hand actually bounced back. That saber actually shot towards Openg's face like before. The back of broken water was about to chop Openg's face. Although it wasn't the tip of the saber, Openg had no doubt that his head would be chopped in half if he was hit. Openg was indeed worthy of being called one of the top experts in the pugilistic world. As the head of the Misty School, at this critical moment he crossed his legs and immediately used the secret technique of the Misty School. Ethereal steps. The 5-colored bolt of black lightning flashed past Openg's forehead, and broken water shot into the stone pillar in the meeting hall. There was no loud sound, and broken water was deeply inserted, as if it was a piece of tofu. From the moment Openg raised the saber to the moment it left his hand and entered the stone pillar, it happened in the blink of an eye. No one seemed to be able to react. Looking at broken water in the stone pillar, they all had the same thought. What a fast saber! Unfortunately, Openg didn't think so at this time. He looked at the few strands of hair in front of him, which were cut off by broken water from his forehead. His body broke out in cold sweat. After roaming the pugilistic world for so many years, it wasn't that he hadn't encountered any thrilling situations, but there was no time as dangerous as this. Thank you to the founder of the Misty School. Thank you to his master. Thank you to the ethereal steps. Without them, he wouldn't be standing here now. When the rest of the people came to their senses and looked at their sect leader, Openg's ashen face had recovered a little of its color. He looked at the box on the ground with lingering fear. It was an ordinary box that had fallen to pieces. He said to Zhang Qingyue, "Qingyue, keep this small box and put it in the library later. Since we can't open it, let's leave it for fate." Then he waved his hand and asked Zhang Qingyue to pick up the small box from the ground. It must be said that Openg was indeed an ambitious and ruthless person in Jianghu. This person had a breadth of mind and stratagem that others could not compare to. If it were someone else, they might not have placed this box in the sect. They would have definitely kept it in a secret chamber, and secretly pondered over the treasures inside to themselves. But as soon as he saw that things weren't going his way, he immediately let go and gave the opportunity to someone else in the gang. This kind of behavior immediately won everyone's praise. In fact, it was precisely this kind of demeanor or method that allowed him to stand out from his 6 fellow disciples, allowing him to be promoted to the position of gang leader by his master. He was also admired by his fellow disciples. In fact, everyone present knew very well that they had no way of opening the box. Perhaps the thousands of people in the gang did not have the ability to open it either. However, the gang leader's actions were very open and aboveboard. If he went back and thought about it carefully, there might be hope. Afterwards, Openg and the others discussed the matter of the next gathering that Yanming Jusher had mentioned. Everyone agreed that with such great benefits, The next gathering would definitely not be as simple as the first one. They should wait for the boss and the second brother to return to the gang before discussing it together. Openg thought for a moment and agreed. Since the matter had been settled, Openg waved his hand and dismissed everyone, leaving only Wenwenhai and Xueqing behind. Everyone filed out. When they passed by the two, they looked at them with gratification and nodded at them. They knew that the gang leader had asked them to stay behind alone to prepare a reward for them. With such great gains this time, it seemed that the two juniors would also receive a good reward. Everyone left the meeting hall. Zhang Qingyue and Old Four went to the library together. The sword manual was naturally placed on the bookshelf. Zhang Qingyue was troubled as to where to place the small box. There was no doubt that the box was very precious, but if it was of little value, it might not be able to achieve the gang leader's goal. In the end, Old Four pointed to the square table next to the bookshelf and said, "Martial nephew, why don't you put it there first? We'll ask your master later." Zhang Qingyue felt that this was the only way for now. He casually placed the box on the table. In any case, there was a record of everything that went in and out of the library, so there was no need to worry about losing it. Even if he lost it, how many people in the world would be able to open it? Zhang Qingyue and Old Four left with peace of mind. The mysterious box settled down in the Misty School's library, quietly waiting for the fated person. In the assembly hall, Openg waited for everyone to leave before he opened his mouth. At this time, his face had already changed into his usual warm smile. "Ahai Qing, you've done really well this time. What reward do you want?" Wenwenhai stepped forward and said, "Master, there are still two things that I haven't reported. I'll tell you about them now." Openg nodded in agreement. Then, Wenwenhai told Openg about what Yanming Jusher had said in the secret plane. The treasures obtained by the disciples who carried out the task should belong to them. After listening, Openg's expression did not change. He asked with a smile, "What treasures did you get?" Wenwenhai and Xueqing came forward and put the 3 herbs they got from the secret plane in front of Openg. "We didn't find any pills or weapons. Yanming Jusher let us each pick 3 herbs from the herb garden for ourselves." Openg said with a smile, "This Yanming Jusher is a wonderful person. He wanted to get more treasures, and actually came up with this method to give a lot of benefits to our disciples. How can we object?" Wenwenhai and Xueqing were stunned when they heard this. They hurriedly asked, "Was there no such agreement? Then this herb?" Openg said, "It doesn't matter. Since Yanming Jusher said so and gave the benefits to you, as a master, I can't help but do you a favor. You can take these things. There are still many things in the secret plane. You just have to go first." Wenwenhai and Xueqing were relieved. Although there were many herbs in the secret plane, how many could be distributed to disciples like them? Moreover, they immediately understood the idea of Yanming Jusher. Although the treasures in the secret plane had been distributed in advance, if other treasures were to be obtained by the disciples by chance, with Yanming Jusher's martial arts and experience, he would have much more opportunities than the disciples of the various sections. Immediately, Openg said, "You take these herbs to the pharmacy hall and ask Hall Master Bai to refine more pills for you. It's better than taking these herbs alone. Otherwise, if there is a problem, wouldn't it be a waste of a good opportunity?" Wenwenhai and Xueqing nodded in agreement. Openg took pity on these 2 disciples and said, "You brought back such a big harvest to the sect this time. It's impossible not to reward you. What reward do you want?" Wenwenhai and Xueqing looked at each other. In fact, they had never thought that this task would be so dangerous and so fruitful. They just treated it as a very ordinary task and didn't think of any reward in advance. Not to mention them, this task was unexpected. Openg didn't expect it, so he couldn't think of a good reward for the time being. This was why he asked his disciples twice. Xueqing said, "Master, we didn't think too much about it. It was all thanks to Master's strategy that we were able to complete this mission well. Moreover, we also gained a lot of benefits, so we don't need any rewards from the sect." Openg looked at his 2 disciples with gratification and said, "Very good. Let's do it this way. This reward will be recorded for the time being. When Master or you have a good idea, it won't be too late to reward." Wen Wenhai and Xueqing both agreed with a smile. Openg asked again, "There's one more thing?" Xueqing went forward and knelt down and said, "Master, it's like this." Then he told him about how he left the sex token to Zhang Kai's family. Openg said, "You two did very well. Fighting with a sword in the Jianghu, you naturally have to get rid of violence and protect the good. For you to be so considerate of ordinary people, Master should praise you." Zhang Kai's family was able to stand out in a time of crisis. It's enough to show that they are virtuous. You don't have to worry about the token being used for other purposes. I agree with Qing Er's way of doing things. It's related to your childhood. How could Master punish you? Get up, Qing. Only then did Xueqing get up. Then Openg said, "Hi Qing. You two are tired. Go back and have a good rest. Prepare for the advancement test in a few days. If you have any problems with cultivation, ask Master in time." Wen Wenhai and Xueqing bowed and left. When they walked to the door of the meeting hall, Openg suddenly called out to them and asked, "Situ Ping of the evil tiger gang also entered the secret plane. Did she also take 3 kinds of herbs like you too?" Wen Wenhai and Xueqing looked at each other and replied, "Yes, but we left first. I don't know how they dealt with it." Openg nodded and didn't say anything. His face was full of contemplation. Situ Ping of the evil tiger gang wasn't in a good mood like Wen Wenhai and Xueqing. She was sitting in the meeting hall of Wanjian Peak and looked at Wanjian Peak's sword master Wan Qingjie with an expression of disbelief. She asked again unwillingly, "Is there really no such agreement?" Wanjian Peak's Wan Qingjie was a short and strong man with a dark face. He said with a fake smile, "Leader Situ, do I have to lie to you about this kind of thing? Xiangyang, give all the herbs you picked from the secret plane to your martial uncle Cheng. Give them to him to refine into medicine like before." Ma Xiangyang lowered his eyebrows and said obediently, "Yes, master." Then Wan Qingjie said, "Leader Situ, the herbs you picked will also be given to my Wanjian Peak to refine. After the medicine is refined, I will give you the priority of giving you the corresponding pills." Situ Ping didn't want to hand over the herbs at this time, but the situation was better than her. She thought for a while, gritted her teeth, and gave her herbs to Ma Xiangyang. She was really not interested in Wan Qingjie's promise. How could sharing pills with others be better than monopolizing them? Ma Xiangyang was Wan Qingjie's disciple. Who knew if the herbs he handed over would be taken back by him in a while? Forget it, forget it. Situ Ping shook her head and tried to expel the thoughts she shouldn't think about from her mind. At this time Wan Qingjie said, "Leader Situ, you've done such a big thing for my sect. My sect should also repay you. What do you think of my Wanjian Peak's power?" Chapter 22. Situ Ping replied, "Compared to a small gang like our evil tiger gang, the difference is like night and day." Wan Qingjie said, "Then how about I have my sect's elder Yunfeng take you in as a disciple? We'll be a family, and the evil tiger gang and Wanjian Peak will be harmonious. Wouldn't that be wonderful?" Situ Ping's face was filled with joy, but her heart was filled with bitterness. If she had this kind of opportunity in the past, she would naturally be overjoyed and agree without hesitation. But now, she was thinking even more. She had gotten involved in the extremely confidential affairs of the Myriad Sword Peak, so the Myriad Sword Peak naturally could not allow her to easily leak the news. However, Wan Qingjie had brazenly snatched away the treasure in her hands, causing her to be extremely disheartened. And if she was accepted into the sect, then the evil tiger gang would naturally belong to Wanjian Peak. Although the evil tiger gang was not big, it was still something that belonged to her. Now that it was given to someone else, it was inevitable that she would feel resentful. However, Wan Qingjie's following words made her feel much more at ease. "Clan leader Situ, if you join my sect and make a great contribution this time, you can find a suitable high-level cultivation method from my sect's ancient records to cultivate. You will definitely be able to reach a higher level of enlightenment and squeeze into the ranks of Jianghu's experts." Situ Ping weighed the pros and cons in her heart for a moment before kneeling down gracefully and kowtowing to Wan Qingjie. "Greetings to sect leader, sword master martial uncle." Wan Qingjie chuckled as he helped her up. "Good martial nephew, get up for now. In a few days, we'll pick an auspicious day for you to officially become Elder Yun's disciple. Come over, Xiangyang, greet your senior sister Situ. Ma Xiangyang obeyed and stepped forward, bowing. Greetings to senior sister. Situ Ping also returned the greeting. Greetings to junior brother. In Wan Jianpeak's meeting hall, the atmosphere was harmonious and everything was calm. Not to mention the foul winds and bloody rain of Jianghu. The Zhang family's small courtyard in the Guozhuang house was filled with endless warmth. The afternoon sun was so bright that even though it was winter, it made the sun even warmer. In the small courtyard of the Zhang clan, Zhang Kai led the group to bask in the sun. The slack days in winter were the favorite days of farmers. They didn't have to get up early to work. The women around the stove could also chat with their men. Looking at the lazy look of the family, Guosufei was extremely satisfied, especially when there was Lu Qian, who was doing needlework beside her. Lu Qian came to the Zhang family a few days ago. Guosufei didn't expect Lu Qian to come so soon. She thought that she would wait until the spring plowing season was over. Yesterday afternoon, when Lu Qian came, Guosufei was busy preparing food for the injured people in the house. Once Lu Qian entered the house, she greeted Butcher Lu and helped Guosufei. She left Butcher Lu, who had sent her here, to talk to Zhang Kai. This made Guosufei feel a lot more relaxed. Many of the household chores became orderly. Lu Qian also brought pork belly for Zhang Xiaohua, and a lot of snacks for her grandmother. Both of them were full of smiles. Although her grandmother couldn't see, she held Lu Qian's hand and praised her. Lu Qian's face turned red. Lu Yeye didn't come. Butcher Lu awkwardly explained that he was busy at home, and since Lu Qian came, Lu Qian needed someone to take care of her. Of course, Zhang Kai and Guosufei didn't mind. They comforted Butcher Lu and said, "The family is busy, and we can't do without anyone. The child has her own things to do. It's good that you're considerate." Only then did Butcher Lu's awkwardness disappear. However, Butcher Lu's awkwardness stopped at lunch. When Zhang Xiaohua came back from getting wine, Butcher Lu pulled Zhang Kai to drink and put the matter at the back of his mind. When Butcher Lu left after eating and drinking, he kept reminding Lu Qian and asking Guosufei's family to take care of Lu Qian. Guosufei thought, "Do I need you to tell me that? If we don't take good care of her, how can we let her stay?" After Lu Qian came, not only did Guosufei feel relaxed and not in a hurry, the other family members also felt the changes in the house. Not to mention the small changes in the house and courtyard. Not to mention the different cooking methods in the morning and evening, which increased their appetite. Just the addition of such a beautiful girl to the big family was enough to make them happy. Although a day didn't mean much, this beginning let the Zhang family smell the sweet taste of life. The Misty School's secret medicine was indeed effective. In just a few days, Zhang Xiaohu's bones and internal organs still hurt a little. His external injuries had basically scabbed. Zhang Kai still needed crutches, but his external injuries were the same as little tigers. Needless to say, Zhang Xiaohua was already running around energetically. Every day, she would hold a wooden stick and dance around. She seemed to be practicing martial arts, but looking at her unorganized appearance, it was just wild fox zen. The most miserable Zhang Xiaolong was now the happiest. His internal and external injuries were more serious than the others. At this moment, there was only a little improvement. Needless to say, his arm was fixed for only a few days. There was still a long time before the next change of dressing. What made Zhang Xiaohu and Zhang Xiaohua envious was that every time Zhang Xiaolong had something to do, such as eating, Lu Qian would feed him. Although Guosufei and Zhang Xiaohua used to feed him, since Lu Qian came, the two of them stood aside. The first time Zhang Xiaolong and Lu Qian fed him, Zhang Xiaolong and Lu Qian both blushed and were very unnatural. When they finished eating, the food was cold. However, Lu Qian quickly got into the role and was generous. Zhang Xiaolong looked at Lu Qian's appearance. She probably served his father and brother at home. Since the girl was so generous, he didn't need to be too reserved, so the two quickly became familiar with each other. Farmers had their own simplicity and masculinity. Although Zhang Xiaolong didn't read many books, didn't know many words, and his appearance was ordinary, His inherent temperament and steady behavior deeply attracted Lu Qian. Lu Qian admired him. She deeply felt that this Zhang Xiaolong was a piece of unpolished jade. He was born in this poor family and was unpolished. It was really God's will for her to meet such a person. Zhang Xiaolong was even more so. The beautiful and pleasant Lu Qian not only had the simplicity and practicality of a farmer, but also the knowledge and propriety of a pretty girl from a humble family. Zhang Xiaolong adored her from the way she handled the household chores to the way she conducted herself with elegance. He had never thought that such an excellent girl would appear in the countryside where he had lived for so many years. At this moment, he felt that he was living in heaven. He couldn't wait to recover from his injury for 1,000 years, and watch the girl who had been engraved in his heart grow old with him. In short, Zhang Xiaolong and Lu Qian were a couple in love. They were attracted together like magnets. Zhang Kai and Guosufei saw it in their eyes and thought about it in their hearts. Although his son had the physique, Lu Qian was from a scholarly family after all. Her vision was naturally different from that of ordinary farmers. His son was illiterate, so how could he compare with the thousands of books in Lu Qian's heart? Moreover, although Mr. Lu's family lived in the countryside, his family was also well off. According to Zhang Xiaohua's description, the life of his family was far from what their family could compare. Even if the girl was willing, her father and brother at home wouldn't agree to it. This was really difficult. How could they probe the girl's mind? As a matter of fact, although the afternoon sun made people sleepy, Guosufei muttered in her heart while doing needlework. How could she beat around the bush to find out the girl's mind without leaving any traces? At this moment, Grandma said, "Sufei, I remember that Xiaolong is 19 years old this year, right?" Guosufei replied, "Yes, mother. After the new year, he will be 20 years old." Grandma asked again, "Some time ago, I heard that you were looking for a wife for Xiaolong. Why haven't there been any news recently?" When Guosufei heard this, her heart was happy. She was just about to doze off when someone sent her a pillow. Her own mother's eyes were really blind, but her heart was very clear. She quickly continued, "It's like this, mother. Before the new year, Zhang Kai and I had this idea. We searched through all the girls in the neighboring villages. In the end, we were willing, but they weren't willing. They were willing, but we didn't think they were suitable. Before we could find a suitable one for Xiaolong, this happened during the new year. We were no longer in the mood. When the weather is hot and Xiaolong's injury is healed, we will look for a good wife that can satisfy our family." After saying this, she didn't look at Zhang Xiaolong's sad eyes. She pretended not to care and said, "While Qian Qian, this female scholar, is still in our family, help us take a look and check." What kind of person was Lu Qian? Lu Qian's exquisite heart acupoint had already heard Guosufei's words. Her face turned red, but she didn't know how to respond. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. Grandma didn't intend to let it go and said, "Then you have to hurry up and look for a wife based on Qian's appearance." These few days, Qian took care of Xiaolong, and even this old woman benefited from it. This child has a good heart and is careful. It's just that I can't see it. Sufei, if you find me a wife who is not as good as Qian, I won't be willing. Sigh, these words were too blunt. Lu Qian's face was hot. She couldn't help but get up and ran into the house. On the other side, Zhang Xiaolong was anxious. His face was red as he said, "Grandma, mother, look at what you are saying, you made her run away." His eyes looked into the house and showed his worry. If it wasn't for his injuries, he would have chased after them. Only Zhang Xiaohua was sitting on her small stool. She looked at her grandmother who couldn't see. The older the ginger, the spicier it was. A few days ago, she had just told her grandmother about the matter between her elder brother and elder sister Lu Qian. Now her grandmother cleverly said it. It seemed that this sister-in-law had a chance. In fact, Guosufei was also very strange at this time. Her mother was very calm. Today she mentioned this matter. Although she could find out what the girl's mind was, after all, it was too rash. It wasn't like her mother's usual style. According to her original plan, she would wait for 10 days to half a month before taking a good look. Chapter 23. Lu Qian hid in the small house with a red face. There was a trace of sweetness and a trace of anger in her heart. The sweetness was that her thoughts were guessed by others. Presumably, her sweetheart also knew. The anger was that she had only been at home for a few days. To speak like this, they were looking down on her too much. Although Lu Qian's face was burning and her heart was a trace of anger, she was also a little confused. After these few days of contact, her grandmother was a very reasonable person. How could she embarrass her in front of her face like this? However, that was not necessarily the case. The elderly were old, and it was inevitable that her heart was confused. She could understand, but how could she go out and meet them now? The people outside were also the same. Looking at the smiling grandmother, Zhang Xiaolong was very speechless. There was no other way. It was not suitable for him to go in at this time. Guo Sufei thought about it and pinched Zhang Xiaohua's ear and said, "It's all because of you. Go and call Lu Qian out." Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her ear and scratched her head. She muttered, "What does it have to do with me?" Guo Sufei smiled and pushed her and said, "If you didn't tell your grandmother about your brother and Lu Qian, how would your grandmother know?" Zhang Xiaohua said, "So you know." After that, she had to get up and walk into the house. As she walked, she thought about what to do. Lu Qian was in the house with a burning face. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua come in, Zhang Xiaohua happily ran in front of Lu Qian. She held Lu Qian's hand and said, "Sister Lu, it's boring to stay at home. Come with me to see my farmland and the well we dug." Lu Qian said, "Okay, I heard from your brother that you opened the land yourself. I've always wanted to see it. We'll go today." After that, Lu Qian took Zhang Xiaohua's hand and walked out of the house. Zhang Xiaohua followed behind Lu Qian. As soon as she walked out of the house, she shouted, "Father, Mother, I'll take Sister Lu to see my land on the hillside. We'll be back in a while." Guo Sufei said, "Then you guys go and come back early. You're in a hurry to come back for dinner. Xiaohua, protect your sister well." Zhang Xiaohua giggled and said, "No problem, Nyangqin." Lu Qian walked in front of Guo Sufei and said in a low voice, "Auntie, I'll go out then." Guo Sufei smiled and said, "Come back early." Thus, Lu Qian and Zhang Xiaohua walked out of the Zhang family's small courtyard. Walking on the path of the Guozhuang house, from time to time, there were familiar villagers who came to greet them. The village was not big. If there was a small matter in any family, they would immediately know. Moreover, the Zhang family, which had always been low-key, suddenly had a beautiful girl. The neighbor who went to Balagu with Zhang Xiaohua had already been told by Zhang Kai not to say anything about Lu Qian. They only said that the children of their relatives came to stay for a period of time to take care of the sick and injured family. Of course, Zhang Kai was sick. Xiaolong and Xiaohu were naughty and injured. Although they were past the naughty season, it was common for people in the mountains to be injured. Everyone did not suspect anything else. It was no wonder that Zhang Kai was so careful. The lesson in the neighboring village was an example. It was better not to be too ostentatious. Although it was reasonable to say that she was a relative, in the eyes of the villagers, it was very thought-provoking. A girl who was prettier than all the other girls in the village came to serve Zhang Xiaolong. All of this could only mean that everyone knew a secret. It was just that no one said it out loud. Looking at Lu Qian, the way they greeted Lu Qian was ambiguous. Originally, Lu Qian came out to escape the awkwardness. In the end, the small path in the village was even more awkward. Fortunately, the path was not too long. Soon they reached the small bridge. Lu Qian liked the stream very much. She liked the stream to flow further and further away. She asked Zhang Xiaohua, "Xiaohua, when you went to Balagu, did you see the stream in our village?" Zhang Xiaohua scratched her head and said, "I didn't pay attention. At that time, I was thinking about how to find your house. I didn't have the heart to look at anything else." Lu Qian smiled and said, "The river in Balagu is much bigger than the one in your village. There is also a lot of land by the river. Even my family has a medium-sized piece of land by the river. It's a pity that no one in my family cultivates it, so we rented it to someone else." Zhang Xiaohua said, "It's a pity. If my family had this piece of land, we wouldn't have to open up a wasteland on the slope." As they spoke, they crossed the bridge. A winding path led up the slope. It was not a real path. As the saying goes, there are many people walking on it. This path appeared on the flat ground of the slope. Lu Qian walked lightly on this path. Her elegant demeanor was like a dancing musical note. Zhang Xiaohua could not help but praise, "Sister Lu, you walk so beautifully." Lu Qian smiled and replied, "You little rascal, why aren't you walking?" Under the winter sun, the slope was filled with a rare warmth. Along the way, the two of them did not feel cold or bleak. Instead, there was the smell of spring. The newly opened farmland on the slope was lying there alone. Its owner had not come to see it for a long time. It was still the same. Lu Qian looked and said in surprise, "Xiaohua, did you open this by yourself? It's a huge piece of land." Zhang Xiaohua raised her head and said proudly, "That's right, Sister Lu. It was all done by me. Big brother and second brother also helped a little." Lu Qian praised her. "You're really not simple. You're an amazing child." Then, she naturally saw the huge stone that looked like a bed under the tree. She asked in surprise, "This kind of stone is rare. It's so neat. It's actually so big. It's also rare to see it in the mountains where we come from." Zhang Xiaohua asked Lu Qian, "Sister Lu, can you guess where this stone came from?" Lu Qian smiled and said, "How can I guess? Could it be that you dug it out when you were reclaiming the land? Could it be that you even carried it from the river?" Lu Qian walked to the big stone and sat down. Holding the stone with her hand, she realized that the stone was not like what she had imagined. It was still somewhat warm. If not for the ugly color of the stone, she might have thought that it was a big piece of jade. She thought in her heart, "Strange." Zhang Xiaohua did not pay attention to the details of the stone. When she brought it up, she was so tired and sweaty. Who knew if it was warm or not? Moreover, she had just left it there, and did not seem to notice it. Even when she sat on it, she thought that it was because of the sun. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Since sister can't guess it, let me show you something." Then, she led Lu Qian down the hill, and walked to the well at the foot of the hill. Lu Qian looked at the huge well, and could not help but laugh. It seemed that the stone was dug out from here. She had never seen a well with such a big hole. Zhang Xiaohua said, "Sister, that stone was dug out from this well. At that time, it took a lot of effort and the well was almost not dug out." Then, she used the tools beside the well to get some water from the well, and handed it to Lu Qian, saying, "Sister, try it. The water is really good. It's sweeter than the water in the river." Lu Qian took it and took a small sip. She raised her eyebrows. Xiaohua was right. The water was really sweet. It was much better than the spring water she used to get from the hill. If she used it to make tea, her father would definitely like it. Thinking of this, she laughed in her heart. If her father knew, he would definitely stay in the Zhang family and not leave. Every day, he would get fresh spring water to make tea. At the very least, he would bring a few buckets home. Lu Qian asked again, "Is the spring water here so good?" Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, "No, the spring water on the hill is not so sweet." Lu Qian said, "Is it because of the well at the bottom of the hill?" Zhang Xiaohua shook her head again and said, "The village next door also dug a well on the south slope. I don't know if it's good or not, but no one cares about it." Lu Qian asked curiously, "Why?" Zhang Xiaohua told her what happened at Mr. Wu's house in the neighboring village. Lu Qian listened with a sad expression. After a while, Lu Qian looked at the sunset on the hill and said, "Xiaohua, get some water. We'll go back and make tea tonight." Zhang Xiaohua happily said, "Is it the one I drank at your house? Isn't it very bitter? I've tasted the one at Old Gua's house in the east of the village. It's too bitter." Lu Qian said, "I didn't see the tea you drank, but it should be it. I brought some this time and didn't take it out. Let's try it today." Zhang Xiaohua energetically fetched a bucket of water from the well, and carried it up the hill behind Lu Qian. They walked back home. As they walked, Lu Qian asked, "Xiaohua, why do you think that Mr. Wu from the neighboring village had such good luck?" Zhang Xiaohua thought for a while and said, "He got something good and bad people found out. He didn't have the ability to hold on to it." Lu Qian seriously said to Zhang Xiaohua, "Yes, Xiaohua. You have to remember, an ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring is a crime. Zhang Xiaohua didn't understand and said, "Sister, what does this mean?" Lu Qian said, "The meaning of this sentence is that if a person is living a good life and has beautiful jade or good things in his possession, he will attract disaster. Xiaohua, you're still young and maybe you don't understand. In fact, the most unpredictable thing in the world is human nature. It's hard to guarantee that someone won't covet your jade. Mr. Wu's mistake is that although he dug out the treasure, if other people found out, those covetous people would come to snatch it. If no one saw when he dug it out, others wouldn't know that he had a treasure and naturally wouldn't come to snatch it." Then Lu Qian jokingly said, "In the future, if Xiaohua has any rare treasures, you have to keep it a secret. Don't let others know. Only in this way can it be your own treasure." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "I will, sister. In the future, if I have a treasure, I won't tell anyone but you, okay?" Lu Qian said, "No, you tell me a secret and you think it's okay if I'm the only one who knows. But I might inadvertently tell another person. I also think it's okay to tell one person. And if another person also thinks so, don't you think that many people will know?" Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, "Yes, sister, you're right. People will know if it's passed on." Zhang Xiaohua said again, "Then sister, what if the one who dug out the treasure is Hero One? Will it be okay?" Lu Qian said, "Then the situation will be different." Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, "What's the difference?" Chapter 24. Lu Qian continued to explain, "When Mr. Wu obtains the treasure, he is powerless and does not have the ability to protect it. That kind of situation is called being a fish on the chopping block. He has no power to fight back and can only bow his head and be captured. On the other hand, Grand Hero One was highly skilled in martial arts and had the strength to protect his treasures. Naturally, this depended on the opponent's ability. If the opponent was stronger than Grand Hero One, Grand Hero One's treasures would be snatched away. But Grand Hero One would not necessarily lose his life. If the opponent is weaker than Hero One, of course they will not be able to snatch away the treasure. In addition, this also depends on the value of the treasure. After all, there is always someone better than you. If the treasure's value is too great, there will always be someone who can restrain you and snatch it away." Zhang Xiaohua excitedly said, "Sister, that is to say, knowing martial arts is always better than not knowing martial arts. You will have the ability to protect your treasure, and the stronger your martial arts, the more precious the treasure you can protect." Lu Qian smiled and said, "Yes, Xiaohua is right." Zhang Xiaohua continued, "If I know martial arts, last time when we went to the market, father, eldest brother and second brother would not have been injured. Sister would also not have been bullied." Lu Qian heard this and her expression was somewhat gloomy. "But how can martial arts be so easy to learn?" Zhang Xiaohua optimistically said, "Don't worry, sister, I will definitely learn martial arts to protect you." Lu Qian was also happy and said, "Good, then we will rely on Hero Zhang's protection in the future." Then she continued, "Sometimes martial arts are like treasures. You can't tell all your secrets to others. It is necessary to leave some for last to protect your life." Zhang Xiaohua thoughtfully thought for a while and said, "Sister is really amazing. How do you know so much?" Lu Qian said, "These are all written in books. Once you read more, you will naturally understand. Little Blossom can read more books in the future, and will know more. Moreover, what is the use of knowing more? In the face of absolute power, everything is just paper." Perhaps Lu Qian didn't care. She told Zhang Xiaohua what she had read in the book, and what she had seen during this period. Zhang Xiaohua didn't care. She just listened. However, these views deeply affected Zhang Xiaohua in the future. While they were talking, the two of them had already arrived at the door of the Zhang family's small courtyard. At this time, the sun had already set, and the last trace of afterglow struggled to be swallowed up by the darkness. A cold wind blew, and looking over the wall, Zhang Xiaohua's family had already returned to their rooms. Zhang Xiaohua secretly laughed in her heart. The task of the afternoon had finally been completed. She said, "Elder sister, you've read so many books. In the future, you have to tell me more about them. You also have to teach my eldest brother how to read and write. Otherwise you will have nothing to say. Lu Qian casually replied. Okay, leave it to me. Then he felt that his words sounded a little awkward. This Lil Blossom was quite scheming. However, she continued to think, this wall is too low. If there is any movement in the courtyard, it can be seen from the outside. When I have time, I have to make it higher. However, she was completely unaware that she already had the awareness of a housewife. The small house at home was still warm. Zhang Kai, Zhang Xiaolong, and Zhang Xiaohu were talking on the Kong. Since Lu Qian came, the grandfather and son had squeezed together. Guo Sufei was already busy preparing dinner. Zhang Xiaohua carried the bucket of water into the courtyard. Her mother, who was in front of the stove, saw it. She asked Xiaohua, "Why did you bring back the bucket by the well?" Zhang Xiaohua said, "Mother, this is the well water. Elder sister Lu said that she brought the tea from home and used this well water to drink." Guo Sufei said, "What's so good about tea? It's so bitter. It's not as good as plain water." Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, "Mother, that's because you haven't drunk good tea. Do you think that all tea tastes the same as the tea from old Guo's house at the entrance of the village? The tea I drank last time at elder sister Lu's house was very good." Lu Qian also said, "Aunt, you'll know when you taste it." Guo Sufei saw that Lu Qian said, so she also said with a smile, "Okay, since Qian said it's good, then we'll share the glory and taste it." Then Lu Qian filled a pot with well water and put it on the fire to boil. The three people in the inner room heard Zhang Xiaohua's words and also stood up to see if there was anything they could help with. Soon the water boiled. The Zhang family didn't have a teapot, so Lu Qian had to put a few tea leaves into the bowl and boil it with water. Zhang Kai and the others looked at the freshly brewed light green tea. Smelling the faint fragrance of the tea, they couldn't help but be puzzled. Is this still tea? Why is it so fragrant? Everyone endured the heat and tasted the tea. In a few mouthfuls, they finished a bowl of tea and wanted to drink more. Lu Qian said, "If you drink too much tea, you won't be able to sleep well at night. If you want to drink more, drink some after dinner." Everyone naturally listened to the expert. Lu Qian was very attentive and brought a small bowl of tea to her grandmother for her to taste. Dinner was still simple tea. Well, wrong. Today's tea was good tea. Everyone in the Zhang family drank it happily. At night, except for Grandma, Lu Qian and Zhang Xiaohua, everyone couldn't sleep. Grandma and Lu Qian didn't drink much. Although Zhang Xiaohua drank the most, he counted sheep like everyone else before midnight. After midnight, he immediately turned over and fell asleep, full of flickering dreams. After dinner, Guo Sufei cleaned up the dishes and boiled the well water for the family to drink. She held a small bowl of tea and went to Grandma's house. As soon as she entered the house, Grandma heard her and asked, "Sufei?" She replied, "Yes, mother. I'll bring you a bowl of tea that Lu Qian brought." Grandma said, "Didn't you drink it before dinner? Qian said that you can't drink too much at night." Guo Sufei said, "I know, mother. I came here for something else." Grandma was puzzled. "What's the matter? Why are you being so mysterious?" Guo Sufei said, "Mother, what do you think of Lu Qian? Why did you say it so directly in front of her this afternoon?" Grandma said, "Sai Sufei, I just think that Lu Qian is too good. She's good at doing housework and is well educated. I heard from Xiaohua that she's also very good-looking and has good family conditions. Our family's Xiaolong doesn't deserve her." Guo Sufei sighed. "Yes, mother. I think so too. However, I feel that she is very satisfied with Xiaolong. It's just that I haven't found a chance to ask in detail. You said this in the afternoon, and I don't know how to ask again." Grandma said, Qian is one thing. We also have to look at her family's opinion. I heard from Xiaohua that her family is educated and not good at farming. Her uncle is also a butcher. It seems that it's hard to communicate with us farmers. Moreover, their family is not as poor as ours. It's really hard to say." Guo Sufei said quietly, "I just feel that it's hard to talk to her family. That's why I want Qian and Xiaolong to be together more. After a long time, when they have feelings for each other, it may be good for us." Grandma was silent for a while. She sighed deeply and said, Sufei, it's not that I don't know what you mean. However, I feel that my body is getting worse and worse. Many times at night, I've dreamed that your father came to find me and asked me to go down to accompany him. I feel that I don't have much time left. That's why I said this in the afternoon. I really want to see my grandson get married, and even see us 4 generations live under the same roof. Before her voice fell, Guasufei's tears flowed out. She was a little choked with sobs. Wiping her tears, she said, "Mother, don't think too much. I reckon that you were just thinking of father, so you had the dream. There's nothing wrong with your body, so you'll definitely be able to see your great-grandson." Grandma stroked Guasufei's hair and said kindly, "Sufei, I know my own body. I've lived for so long and I've watched you grow up. I've watched you get married and have children. I've also watched Xiaolong, Xiaohu and Xiaohua grow up. I'm already very satisfied. What I said in the afternoon was also on a whim. She's only been here for a few days, and it's indeed inappropriate to mention this matter. If you guys treat her well, who knows, she might get together with our Xiaolong. That would be Xiaolong's fortune and our family's fortune." Guasufei said a few more words to Grandma before she got up and went out. She picked up the cold tea and tried it with her mouth. It was no longer drinkable. She had no choice but to splash it in the courtyard. She turned back to look at her mother's shadow in the dark room. Her heart was filled with bitterness and tears flowed down her cheeks again. She was very clear in her heart that ever since she had children, her entire body and mind had been placed on Zhang Kai and the other children. She rarely cared about or thought about her own mother. She always felt that she was under her mother's big tree, and that she could rely on her mother. Now that she heard her mother's words, she realized that she had neglected too much and given too little to her mother. Everything was precious only when it was lost. Often, the ordinary things by one's side should be treasured even more. Now, whether it was regret or disappointment, she always felt empty in her heart. Some things were breaking and she couldn't grasp them with her hands. Guasufei walked into the central room absent-mindedly. Lu Qian was doing needlework under the light. She looked up and saw that Guasufei's expression was strange. She quickly got up and took the empty bowl in her hand. She asked, "Aunt, what's the matter?" Guasufei forced a smile and said, "It's nothing. I'm a little tired." Then, she went to Zhang Kai's hut to take a look. Lu Qian saw that she didn't say anything, so she sat down again. She worked while looking at Guasufei. Several men in the hut were drinking tea while doing farm work. There was also a man lying down to recuperate. Guasufei didn't say much. She just said, "When you're done, go to bed early. Xiaohua, take care of your grandmother at night." Everyone responded, "Okay." They didn't look up. Guasufei didn't care. She lowered her head and went straight back to her hut. She didn't do needlework in the central room. Lu Qian was even more surprised. She didn't know what happened over there. Since Guasufei didn't say anything, she couldn't force her to ask. When it was late at night, everyone cleaned up and went to bed. Lu Qian returned to her hut. The light in the hut was still on. Guasufei had already fallen asleep. Lu Qian blew out the oil lamp and lay down. Chapter 25. Lu Qian laid down with her clothes on. She could not fall asleep in the dark. Usually, it was Guasufei who tidied up the house and was the last one to go to sleep. Tonight, she lay on the Kong early and did not get up to settle the others down. The other men did not notice these details, but Lu Qian took it to heart. Especially when she saw the strange expression on her grandmother's face after returning to the house. It made Lu Qian even more suspicious. However, this was the Zhang family's matter after all. As an outsider, Lu Qian was not in a position to ask, so she could only keep it in her heart. In the dark, Guasufei also tossed and turned, occasionally sobbing. After a long time, Guasufei's mood calmed down. She asked softly, "Qianqian, you haven't slept yet, right?" Lu Qian said carefully, "I haven't fallen asleep yet, auntie." Guasufei sighed and said apologetically, "Alas, there are some things that make my heart uncomfortable. I've made a fool of myself." Lu Qian smiled apologetically and said, "Auntie, who doesn't encounter troublesome things? It's nothing." There was another moment of silence. Guosufei continued to say. Qianqian, when did your mother leave you? Lu Qian thought for a while and said, I heard from my father that when I was 4 years old, she contracted a very serious disease. She had sought treatment several times, but it did not work. When my mother left, I did not have any impression. Guosufei said, It may be a kind of happiness to not have any impression. You don't have to miss her all the time. Lu Qian said, Yes, Auntie's words are very reasonable. My impression of my mother was told to me by my father. I heard from my father that my mother's family was very rich. At that time, my father's family was not well, but my mother was moved by my father's knowledge. My grandfather and grandmother were against it and firmly disagreed. In order to be with my father, my mother resolutely left home and cut off contact with my parents. Alas, my grandfather was also heartless. Until now, I still don't know where they are and have never come to see us. Father is very knowledgeable, but he doesn't like government affairs and disdains the intrigue of the officialdom. That's why he didn't leave home and lived in the mountain village, teaching for a living. Mother also lived there. After pausing for a moment, Lu Qian continued, Mother's body was weak to begin with, and the doctor told her that it was best for her not to have a child. However, for the sake of father, Mother still gave birth to my brother. At that time, her vitality was greatly damaged, and she only recovered after many years of recuperation. When she was pregnant with me, Father also advised Mother, fearing that something might happen to her. However, Mother said that since she had a child, it was a gift from the heavens, and she was willing to give up everything for the child. When she gave birth to me, everything went smoothly, but Mother's body collapsed, and she was in a terrible state until she passed away. At this point, Lu Qian's voice was choked with sobs. Guosufei comforted her and said, Qian, when you become a mother in the future, you will know that a child is everything in a mother's heart. If she can do 10% for her child, a mother will definitely not do 9%. Although you are still in mother's stomach, everything about you has already been branded in mother's heart. She will definitely not think about her own body and not want you. She will think about you early on and bring you safely into this world. Lu Qian said, That's right, Auntie. Sometimes I am very grateful to my mother in my heart. Although I really only have a vague impression of my mother, she was not only able to escape the shackles of the family for her own happiness, she was also able to sacrifice her life for her child. Sometimes, when I think about it, a mother's love is so ordinary and great. Moreover, Auntie, I haven't been here for long, but I especially like the harmonious atmosphere in your family. When I see how Xiaohua and the rest rely on you, I am also very envious. Guosufei said, Qian, I can't compare to your mother. I have lived in this small mountain village since I was young and didn't learn to read. I can't compare to your mother who read a lot of books and know a lot of things. Ever since your uncle married into our family, I felt that since the two of us live together, we should live in harmony, respect, and love each other. Otherwise, what fun would there be in life? Later on, there were the 3 brothers Xiaolong, Xiaohu, and Xiaohua. You don't know how it felt to watch them grow up bit by bit. My heart was filled with pride and achievement. Your uncle and I are not literate and have little experience. Our children also suffered with us and can't be taught well. We can't compare to you siblings. Lu Qian said, Auntie, you're wrong. Although we siblings have read more books than Xiaolong and the rest, we also know more words and have more experience. But Auntie, when Yeye and I were bullied in town, there were many scholars present who would stand up for us. It was Xiaolong and the rest who didn't read much, but they knew the justice of heaven and earth. They stood up without fear of power and fists. This kind of good is the real good. The more books they read, the less hot-blooded and more considerate. They might not be better than those who don't read. Guosufei also said with relief, Speaking of them, I am really happy. These children are kind by nature and have been very sensible since they were young. Although they are naughty, they don't harm others. They also know their family's situation and have never caused trouble for us. Since they were young, everyone in the village liked them very much. When it comes to helping others, they have done a lot. I, as their mother, am very proud of them. Actually, sometimes I think that if our family's situation was really good, we might not be able to feel at ease with them now. Lu Qian agreed. Yes, Auntie. Sometimes a person's life is destined. They can grow up well in this environment, but there might not be a good outcome if they forcefully change the environment. Then, when Lu Qian saw that Guosufei's mood had improved, she continued to ask, Auntie, it seems that you haven't told me about today's matter. It's not good to keep things to yourself. It's good for your health to talk about it. Guosufei forced a smile and said, Look at me. When it comes to children, I digress. I really miss children a lot in my life. Lu Qian did not reply. Guosufei continued. As a mother, I miss my children. I worry about their health, food, and clothing, but I neglected my mother. When I was a child, it was my mother who took care of me and paid attention to me. She also watched me grow up and become an adult. Now I am wholeheartedly devoted to my children, and have long forgotten my mother. Although I take care of her every day, cook for her, and make new clothes for her, I rarely talk to her and ask her about her thoughts. Now that I think about it, I should have done more for my mother. Lu Qian also felt suffocated. Yes, all the mothers in the world doted on their children, but their children often neglected their mothers. She comforted Guosufei and said, Auntie, Grandma is happy to see that you care about your children. She won't mind that you don't care about her. She will only give her love for you to her grandson. Moreover, Auntie, your mother is also by your side. Isn't it better than me, who doesn't have a mother to dote on? Guosufei said faintly, But when you want to repay your mother, you realize that you don't have much time with her. Do you regret that you didn't realize this earlier? Lu Qian also sighed and said, Yes, it's a pity that the child wants to take care of his parents but can't wait for him. However, Auntie, Grandma is already so old. She should be very happy to be able to see you get married and see your grandson grow up. Although you don't directly care about her, you are actually indirectly loving and caring for her. I don't think Grandma will blame you. After pausing for a moment, Guosufei said, Qian, it's good to be able to read, and understand things like you. After hearing your words, I feel much more at ease. Sometimes village women like us just can't get over it. Lu Qian said, Auntie, don't praise me like that. I'm also a farmer. Guosufei said, Qian, don't be modest. At least I know that there are no children as smart as you in the surrounding villages and 8 villages. That's right, the words Grandma said to you in the afternoon were rude. Don't mind it. Lu Qian said, I won't, Auntie. Guosufei was quiet for a while and finally said, Qian, but then again, this is also her last wish. Moreover, our family likes you very much. I have always wanted to ask your thoughts. Since we have said so much today, I won't care too much. What do you think of Xiaolong? This time, it was Lu Qian's turn to be quiet. Lu Qian didn't know how to answer in her heart. Logically speaking, she was very satisfied with Xiaolong, but after all, it was still a short time. These few days of interaction couldn't let her see a person's nature clearly. However, if fate brought them together, they wouldn't know each other. Sometimes, fate was a very difficult thing to explain clearly. Just a few days of interaction could leave an unforgettable impression, and years of interaction might only leave behind friendship. It was the same for looking at a person. Sometimes, it only needed a glance to understand a person. If you couldn't understand, even if you looked at thousands of times, it would only be a blur. As for her and Xiaolong's fate, from the hero saving the beauty to the beauty repaying him with her body, it was really a story passed down from generation to generation. But to bet her happiness on Zhang Xiaolong just because of this, she naturally hesitated for a while. Grandma was very good to her, and the Zhang family was also very good to her. She also liked Zhang Xiaolong very much. She also liked this poor but warm and harmonious family. This family was also very much like her own family, full of respect and love. She was also willing to join this family, and was also willing to fulfill her grandmother's last wish to see her leave this world with no regrets. However, all of this seemed too immature. Should she be given a period of time to ferment and ferment? Lu Qian hesitated and found it difficult to answer. After a long while she said, Auntie, it's too late today. Let's talk about it another day. Gua Sufei also sighed softly and didn't speak anymore. In the small courtyard of the Zhang family, the moonlight was shining. How many people were sleeping soundly? Chapter 26. Under the same night sky, no one was sleeping in the meeting hall of the misty mountain villa. In the meeting hall at night, countless butter candles as thick as a boy's arm were lit. The whole meeting hall was as bright as day. Compared to the hustle and bustle during the day, there were only 6 people in the meeting hall. Yes, there were 6 of them. They were the famous Misty 6 Tigers in Jianghu. Peng was still sitting in the chair of the faction leader. On his left was the eldest, Hu Yuni, and the second Li Jian. On his right was the 4th Shangguan Fenglu, the 5th Lu Qingyang, and the 6th Su Peihua. The eldest, Hu Yuni, was a robust middle-aged man. He was dressed plainly, and even looked a little mature. At first glance, people would think that he was an old farmer. His appearance was also ordinary, with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He was summoned back by the faction's emergency signal, but he didn't seem to be in a hurry to ask questions. He slowly tasted the green tea in his hand. The second, Li Jian, was a tall man with a thin face. He wore a green robe and held a sword in front of his knees. His face was cold and indifferent. He really lived up to his name. At this time, Li Jian also lowered his head and squinted his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Opposite him, Lu Laowu was a short and fat man. He was dressed even more crudely, even revealing the black hair on his chest. There were 2 Xianhua axes at his feet. On the table beside him was not tea, but a small wine pot. This guy's style really didn't match his name. At this time, he didn't pick up the small wine pot to take a sip. From time to time, he would look at Peng, the eldest, and the second. Finally, he focused on Shangguan Fenglu and Shangguan Fenglu, who were whispering to each other. Shangguan Fenglu and Shangguan Fenglu obviously knew why they came to discuss things at night. Their faces were full of excitement as they whispered to each other. Originally, Shangguan Fenglu's seat was at the back, but he desperately swapped with Lu Laowu so that he could be closer to Shangguan Fenglu. Lu Laowu anxiously looked at the 2 people whispering to each other. He couldn't hear anything. He was so anxious that he scratched his ears and cheeks. But this was the meeting hall, so he couldn't make a noise. He could only angrily gulp down wine and wait for Peng to speak. Peng also seemed to be thinking about something, and did not pay too much attention to his fellow disciples. Peng waited until all the brothers in the hall were a little anxious. Only then did he raise his head, look at the familiar faces of his fellow brothers, and speak. Eldest senior brother, second senior brother, and 5th junior brother, you all just rushed back to the sect this afternoon. The journey must have been tiring, and we didn't have time to let you rest. However, I do have an important matter to discuss with you. Don't blame old 4 and old 6. This time, I gave a strict order to keep their mouths shut. This matter is of great importance. I have to be careful. Hu Laoda slowly put down the teacup and said, Sect leader Shidi has always been steady in doing things. We all admire him very much. There's nothing to blame him for. However, the matter you speak of is of great importance. I want to listen carefully. Recently, the Jianghu has been peaceful. Several large sects have been concealing their strength and biding their time. The demonic sect has also ceased all activities. It's as if they've all returned home to farm. This is an opportunity for our Misty School to increase our power. Could it be that Shidi has a good idea? Li Laowu disagreed and coldly said, In the Jianghu, strength speaks. Without good martial arts, any strategy is useless. I think it's better not to use any schemes and tricks. It's better to practice more swordsmanship. Hu Laoda knew that this second junior brother was cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. He didn't consider other people's thoughts when he spoke. His words were not directed at him, and what he said made sense. He naturally ignored it. Lu Laowu echoed and raised his axe, saying, Third brother, which bastard is looking for trouble? I'll go chop him up. Shangguan Laowu and Su Laowu smiled and looked at them, but didn't speak. Peng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He waved his hand at Lu Laowu and said, Laowu, sit down. Don't be impatient. It's not as bad as you say. Then he said to Hu Laoda and Li Laowu, Eldest senior brother, second senior brother. This time it's not a matter of fighting over territory with any sect. There's no need to use any schemes. He deliberately paused and said, "This time I called all of you here because there's a good thing." The three of them couldn't help but be confused. They all frowned. Lu Laowu said, "Third brother, what good thing has fallen on our heads?" Li Laowu said, "Could it be that a pie has fallen from the sky?" Hu Laoda didn't say anything. He thought for a moment and said, "Laowu, could it be the old beggar you mentioned last time?" Openg smiled and nodded. Lu Laowu laughed. His grandmother, that old beggar really didn't lie? I threw this matter to the back of my mind. It's already been a year. Who still remembers? Li Laowu said with a straight face. "When did you go out? You seem to have been in the sect this year. How come I didn't know you went out?" Openg said, "I didn't go myself." Lu Laowu interrupted at this time. He pointed at Shangguan Laowu and Su Laowu and said, "I was wondering why these two people were whispering the moment they came in. So it was you guys who went. Why didn't you say anything in advance?" Su Laowu quickly said, "Fifth brother, you're mistaken. We just found out a few days ago." The three of them became more and more confused. Openg quickly explained, "Laowu and Laowu really didn't go. I sent a Hai and Qing. When Lu Laowu heard this, he immediately jumped up. "You actually sent two disciples for such an important matter. Aren't you afraid that something will go wrong?" Hu Laoda glared at him and said, "Don't be so surprised, okay? Aren't the two of them safe? Otherwise, how can we sit here and discuss things peacefully?" Su Laowu thought for a moment and said, "That's true." Openg smiled and explained, "It's like this. In order to not let the spies of the other sects notice our movements and give them a chance to loot a burning house, I, the Tan family's master, and the Wanjian Peak's sword master didn't go. We only sent the second-generation disciples of our sect to the place we chose in advance. Yanming Jusher, who few people in Jianghu paid attention to, took them there." Li Laowu said, "This Yanming Jusher's martial arts are average. He's smart, but he's shrewd. A Hai will be at a disadvantage if he goes with Qing. Hu Laoda said, "Since Laowu and the others let him take them, they naturally have a way to guard against him." Openg rubbed his nose and said, "Eldest senior brother is right. Before he left, all three of us sent people close to him to his Yanming mountain villa. He also sent people to escort his wife and children to our sections. When the matter is completed, we can then escort his wife and children back and exchange our people at the same time." Hu Laoda asked, "Who did you send?" Openg said, "Naturally it was Yen. Hu Laoda nodded. Openg continued, "She just returned a few days ago and is resting in the villa." Hu Laoda also said, "She's the only one who's suitable for this kind of thing. It's been hard on her." Li Laowu said, "She's your sister. Naturally, she should share her brother's worries. However, that Yanming Jusher actually didn't play any tricks? That's strange." Openg's eyes curved into crescents as he said, "How could he not? He proposed to use rock paper scissors instead of a martial arts competition to divide the treasures. In the end, he was completely defeated by our Qing. Lu Laowu also laughed. "That's right. This girl never loses when it comes to guessing. She even used this to get me drunk. This Yanming Jusher really shot himself in the foot." Openg said again, "The most ridiculous thing was that he even faked an imperial edict, saying that the extra treasures were up to fate. Whoever got it would get it. In the end, there weren't many treasures. He only took a few extra portions of herbs." Man proposes, God disposes. Herbs? Lu Laowu was the first to interrupt again. "You didn't get any divine weapons?" Su Laowu said seriously, "Of course I did. It's a Pangu axe." Lu Laowu immediately jumped up and rushed in front of Openg saying, "Really? Third brother, this Pangu axe is the weapon of my dreams. This time, you have to give it to me. I'll use it to split this Jianghu in half." Before Openg could say anything, Hu Laoda scolded him. "Laowu, go back and sit down. This is a discussion hall. Don't forget the rules." Lu Laowu was quite afraid of Hu Laoda. He slunk back to his seat and said innocently, "Boss, this is my dream. You can't destroy it." I'm definitely going to have this axe. Li Laowu opened his mouth. You really believe in something like the Pangu axe? How about I exchange it with the Xianyuan sword? Lu Laowu muttered. You don't have the Xianyuan sword. Li Laowu continued. You don't have the Pangu axe either. At this time, Hu Laoda opened his mouth. Don't listen to Lu Laowu's nonsense. The Pangu axe is just a legend. How can it possibly exist? At this time, Openg said mysteriously, although Laowu's words are a joke, senior brother, you really made a mistake this time. There really is a legendary item inside. This time, Hu Laoda was also moved, saying, What item? Isn't it a herb? Openg was very satisfied that Boss Hu was so surprised, saying, The herb is just a bonus. The real treasure is something else. Lu Laowu was not happy. If it's not the Pangu axe, what legendary item is there? Could it be the Xianyuan sword? The cultivation god's heaven's recommendation seal? The elixir of immortality? Shangguan Laowu spoke. Laowu is really amazing. He actually guessed it correctly. I can't even dream of it. The remaining 3 people were really stunned. Hu Laoda looked at Li Laowu and gave him a look. Li Laowu stood up and used his qinggong. He floated out of the meeting hall like a wisp of smoke and flew up to the roof. He quickly circled around the meeting hall. Finally, he stood on the roof of the meeting hall and listened carefully for a while. Only then did he fly down and quickly walk back to his seat. He said to Hu Laoda, I didn't find any random people around. Hu Laoda nodded and then looked at Openg. Lu Laowu was still in a daze, as if he didn't understand what the two were doing. Hu Laoda said to Openg, Laowu, tell us in detail about the treasure inside. Chapter 27. Openg then took out a small porcelain bottle from his arms and handed it to Boss Hu. Boss Hu took the small porcelain bottle and carefully looked at the words on it. Even if he was a calm person, his hands trembled. He was so frightened by the 3 words that he almost dropped the bottle. Boss Hu sat there holding the bottle and didn't speak. Seeing Boss Hu like this, Li Laowu and Lu Laowu curiously walked forward and looked at the bottle on both sides. Life-prolonging pill? Both of them exclaimed. What was different was the second sentence. Li Laowu said, There is such a thing. Lu Laowu said, What is this? Boss Hu and Li Laowu's faces were gloomy and uncertain. Their frowns became deeper and deeper. Lu Laowu looked at the expressions of the two puzzled. He even turned to look at Openg, Shangguan Laosi and Su Laolu. The 3 of them also had a serious look on their faces. After a cup of tea's time, Boss Hu let out a long breath and seemed to have made up his mind. He calmed down and straightened his back again. He returned the small porcelain bottle to Openg. He said, Lao-san, what are you going to do with it? Openg could hear the change in the way he addressed him. This Lao-san was actually a real way of addressing him as a brother, not a pompous form of address like sect leader's junior martial brother. Instead, he was talking to Openg as an older brother. Openg also hurriedly said respectfully, Big brother, didn't I call all the brothers over so that we can discuss it together? Boss Hu shook his head and said, Lao-san, this kind of thing, you shouldn't show it to the brothers. You should keep it yourself. Openg said with a wry smile, Big brother, it's not that I didn't think about it. However, this thing was obtained from the secret plane. It's a box with 4 copies. I don't know if other people's boxes have this thing. Moreover, when I opened it here, I was careless. Lao-san, Lu Lao-san, Ahai and Qing were all there. I can't keep it a secret. Boss Hu said, Well, since that's the case, you should keep it first. This kind of thing is not something that people like us can bear. You must not take it privately. When the storm arises in the future, take it out again. Hopefully you can get rid of this burden. The rest of the people were thinking about it. Only old Fifth Lu was depressed. He pulled old Sixth Su and asked, Sixth brother, what is this longevity pill? Su Laolu said unhappily, Fifth brother, didn't you just say that there is a legendary elixir of immortality? This is it. It can extend a person's life by 10 years. Ah! Old Fifth Lu cried out. There's actually such a thing? Then why aren't you bringing it over? One for each of us. How long will it take? Li Laowu said sarcastically. 10 more years? Once you take it and people find out, they will immediately come knocking on your door. You won't even be able to live another day. Old Fifth Lu struggled and said, I'll run after eating. Let's see where they can find me. Li Lauer sneered. Everyone in the Jianghu is looking for you. Where are you going? What about Misty School? What about your family? When Old Fifth Lu heard this, he did not know how to answer. He blinked his eyes, smacked his lips, raised his eyebrows and said almost shamelessly, Don't I still have you guys in front of me? What am I afraid of? Li Lauer also curled his lips and ignored him. Hu Laoda glared at Old Fifth Lu and said, Old Fifth, you're not young anymore. Can't you use your brain when you're in trouble? Who knows if this thing is real or fake? Even if it's real, who will the 6 of us give it to? Didn't your second brother just say that even if we take it, we will be hunted down by the entire Jianghu? Who can stand it? Why don't we just put it aside and wait for things to change? If someone we can't afford to offend comes knocking, we'll tell the Jianghu and give them this hot potato. If there's no movement, then it won't be too late for us brothers to make plans. Old Fifth Lu picked up the wine pot and took a big gulp. He said, I only have my mouth. I don't know anything else. Just give me a bite when the time comes. Openg turned his head and asked the other brothers, Brothers, what do you think of Big Brother's idea? Shangguan Laosi stroked his beard and said, Big Brother's idea is very much to my liking. I've been thinking about this for the past few days. Instead of hoping for an unreliable life of 10 years, it's better to live the life we have now. Don't ruin the great foundation of our Misty School. Also, if there's any trouble when the time comes, third brother, you must deal with it well. If you don't handle it well, it might backfire. Li Lauer nodded and did not say anything. Su Laolu said with a smile, I'll listen to Big Brother and fourth brother. Old Fifth Lu ignored Openg's gaze and continued drinking. Openg's gaze also swept past him and directly ignored him. Openg saw that no one had any objections and said, Then I'll take care of this thing. We'll see how the situation develops in the future. Old Fifth Lu saw that Openg ignored him and muttered in a low voice, I'm ignoring you. You should ask for my opinion. Hu Boss looked at him muttering and asked, Old Fifth, do you have something to say? Old Fifth Lu quickly stood up and said, No, I just want to ask. Did you find these things in the secret plane that look edible, but can't move your mouth? Hu Boss kept a straight face and no longer paid attention to him. He turned his head and looked at Openg. This time, Openg was smiling like a flower. He took out 2 small porcelain bottles from his bosom and handed them to Hu Boss. Hu Boss took the porcelain bottles and carefully looked at them. Suddenly he was surprised again. Qi-generating pill? There really is such a treasure. It hasn't appeared in Jianghu for many years. Next to him, Old Fifth Lu couldn't sit still this time. He put away that deadpan face and came over. Only Shangguan Laosi, Su Laolu, and Lu Laowu didn't move. The first 2 already knew, but the last one heartlessly asked again. Qi-generating pill? What's this thing? Coincidentally, Hu Boss' words also came out at this time. Bone-strengthening pill? What's this thing? Openg arched his eyebrows and said with a grin. This qi-generating pill. Everyone knows that it's a legendary panacea for increasing one's power. Those who take it can increase their power by 20 years. However, this is only for those who cultivate internal martial arts. In other words, all the brothers here, except for Old Fifth and Old Sixth, so long as they take this qi-generating pill, their internal strength will double, saving 20 years of bitter cultivation. However, according to my investigation of the gang's ancient records, it seems that there are some flaws, but it's not clearly stated. Listening to this, Su Laoyo's face became somewhat unnatural. He originally thought that he could get a share of the soup, but after listening to Openg, this qi-generating pill instead had no fate with him. He still asked, Third brother, is it true that we can't take external martial arts? Lu Laowu was also depressed. His grandmother, Why is my life so bad? Openg was still smiling as he said, I've carefully looked into it. Sixth brother, external martial arts really aren't effective. Su Laolu slumped in his chair, speechless. Shangguan Laosi followed up. Third brother, how many qi-generating pills are there in this bottle? We have 4 people. It might not be enough. What should we do? Openg forced a smile and said, I also didn't dare to open it. I only dared to open it when all the brothers were here. Hu Laodao's eyes flickered, and he also nodded without saying anything. Openg looked at the somewhat dispirited Lu Laowu and Su Laolu, and then said, This bone-strengthening pill isn't recorded in our Misty School's ancient records. I informed the disciples under the gang to have the spies placed in each sect pay more attention. As a matter of fact, yesterday news came from the Dalan Temple, saying that there is a little record in the ancient records of the Dalan Temple. Openg drank a mouthful of green tea. Ignoring Lu Laowu's resentful gaze, he still leisurely said, According to the ancient records of the Dalan Temple, this bone-strengthening pill is the exact opposite of the qi-generating pill. It's specially prepared for those who cultivate external martial arts. It's useless for those who cultivate internal martial arts. For those who cultivate external martial arts like Laowu and Laolu, after taking it, it will promote the strength of their bones, skin, and muscles. It will also increase the precision of their external martial arts. However, Hu Laodao's figure flashed and dodged. He angrily said, What are you doing, Laowu? Why are you so careless? Seeing this, Lu Laowu embarrassedly smiled and said, I'm in a hurry. I want to see what this thing looks like. Hu Laodao scolded, Sit there obediently. In a moment, I'll naturally give it to you. Lu Laowu obediently sat back down. Su Laoyo's expression was also abnormally excited. Anyone who had experienced such a great change in mood would be so excited that they wouldn't be able to sit still. He also covetously looked at the small porcelain bottle. Hu Laodao took the 2 small porcelain bottles and didn't return them to Openg. Instead, he sat down on a chair. He looked at Openg with a smile and said with a very gratified tone, Lao-san, you're good, really good. Laoer, it's not wrong that we didn't fight with Lao-san for the position of headmaster back then. To be able to obtain so many good things without anyone noticing, your contribution is comparable to the founder of the headmaster school. The 2 of us can't do it. With these 2 things, our Misty School's strength has increased by more than 1 level. Hu Laodao looked at the 2 porcelain bottles in amusement and continued, Even if there's only 1 pill in here, we can have 2 more peerless experts. Although there's still a gap between us and the top schools like the Dalan Temple, in the middle schools, we can definitely be ranked at the top. Openg looked at Hu Laodao's excited expression and also said, Big brother, you're overpraising me. This little brother really can't accept it. It's just that my luck is good. It's just a fluke. Hu Laodao said, Luck is also a part of strength. Third brother, you don't have to be modest. Then he continued, It's just that I don't know how many pills are in this porcelain bottle. It's not easy for the 6 of us to distribute them. Openg said, Big brother, I took this thing out today so that you can decide how to distribute it. Although I'm the headmaster, and I also hope to become a peerless expert, the rise and success of a headmaster school is the result of the efforts of all the brothers. However, relying on one headmaster, you can't do too much. Therefore, I hope that no matter how many pills are in the porcelain bottle, we brothers can't harm each other because of this. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.